Okay, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to all of our guests and friends to join us. And thank you so much for coming to this event. I am the host today, Gladys Sen, and I am one of the co-founders and the co-chairs of External of University of Toronto China Education Forum. And I am a professional curriculum designer and educational innovator. And currently, I am the second-year Doctor of Education student of International Educational Leadership and Policy at OAZ U of T. My research mainly focuses on the curriculum innovation and teachers' development. And currently, my research is supporting professional development of school teachers and also developing the community-engaged curriculum for hundreds of students in rural areas in China. And at the start of our UTCF 2024 opening ceremony, let us take a moment to acknowledge the land on which we gather today, on which the University of Toronto operates. So for thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of the Wendat, the Seneca, and the Misaga of the Credit. Today, this meeting place continues to be home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful for the opportunity to work on this land. University of Toronto China Education Forum is an official nonprofit student-led organization at the University of Toronto, which is based at OAZ, Ontario Institute for Studies in Education. So University of Toronto China Education Forum aims to bridge conversations between East and West, and we value and embrace the diverse knowledge, perspectives, and the wisdoms of all communities. Our goal is to create an inclusive platform that honors all cultures and backgrounds. We believe that education can be a powerful tool for fostering understanding, respect, and collaboration. Now, it's my great pleasure to introduce our special guest today. And please join me in welcoming Mr. David Hayes, Director of Recruitment and Admission at OAZ U of T. Welcome. Oh, David, just 1 second. Let me introduce everyone. Thank you. And Professor Ruth Hay Ho from the Department of Leadership, Higher and Adult Education at OAZ. And we're so honored to have you with us today. Thank you. And Professor John Miller from the Department of Curriculum, Teaching and Learning at OAZ. Thank you for joining us. Professor Jing Lee, the professor at Western University. Welcome, Professor Lee. And last but not least, Professor Akiyama, Assistant Professor at Daniels Faculty of Architecture, Landscape and Design, University of Toronto. Welcome. Now, we are honored to introduce to our first guest speaker, David Hayes, who is the Director of Admissions at OAZ. So he will deliver the opening remarks on behalf of OAZ. Please join me to welcome David. Yeah, it's now the time.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for having me. I'm David Hayes, as Gladys mentioned. I'm the Director of Recruitment and Admissions here at OAZ, so you might get a bit of the recruitment side of me in these remarks. But I'm here to welcome you to OAZ, to the Ontario Institute for Studies in Education. And I'd just like to thank the UTCF for inviting me and for all of you to come and join and hold your annual conference at OAZ. We're very happy to have you here this morning, and based on what I know about the organization, about the conference this year, I think you couldn't have chosen a better place to hold this. OAZ is a leader in education studies. We are innovators and collaborators, and leaders have been influencing education throughout the world for over 100 years. And we are currently ranked #1 in education in Canada and #7 in the world, behind some lousy universities like Oxford and Harvard and things like that. So we are leaders in that area. And I suspect some of you are familiar with OAZ, and you're definitely likely familiar with the fact that we have teachers education. but we do a wide variety of different things. We have 4 different departments at OISE. One's applied psychology and human development, which includes child study and education, psychology and counseling, as well as developmental psychology. And then we have a department in curriculum teaching and learning, which includes our Masters of Teaching, but also has other programs in curriculum development and pedagogy and language and literacy, leadership, higher education, and adult education, as well as social justice education. So there's a wide breadth of careers and possibilities within education, as well as influencing other careers throughout the world. So reflecting on the theme of this year's forum and the theme of lightening and the 3 key words of diversity, bonding, and empowerment, I was thinking about how those 3 words run through the core of OISE's education, and how everything that we do kind of has that as an aspect to it, whether it's in our diverse student body of international students from around the world that bring different experiences and cultures and perspectives as they come into the classroom, or whether it's in the classroom where we have innovative teaching methods and we're always pushing boundaries to take different perspectives and challenges and experiences into our learning, or whether it's through the empowerment of our students as they push for social change and social justice. All of our graduates are taking all of these learnings, going out into the world, and taking these values whether it's in Toronto, across Canada, or throughout the world, and they're influencing change and positive education throughout the world. So I just want to thank you for coming. That's the end of the remarks. I'm going to try something. Huang Ying. Did I get that right? No, I butchered it, right? It's supposed to be welcome. I apologize. But thank you for coming to OISE. We are, Andy is at the back. If you have any questions about any of our programs, or you'd like to know more, we do have still some open for the fall. So if you're interested in applying to get started in September, please do so. But if not, we would love to see you around next year, or maybe you're already part of OISE, and we're happy to have you. So thank you very much. Thank you much for having me, and enjoy your time at OISE.
Thank you, David. Thank you for the OISE just providing us this environment to have our event here. Then let's welcome Professor Ruth He-Ho to have our opening greeting. So Dr. He-Ho is a professor at the OISE, and she has the excellent expert in the field of comparative education and also the education in China. Let's welcome Professor He-Ho.
My great pleasure to have the chance to say a few words. I'm simply thrilled to see this group, UTCEF, founded, I think, a year or more ago, bringing the richness of China's civilization, culture, education in very dynamic ways through all the connections created through this program. And the reason it's so important to me, if you look at me, you won't believe it, but I'm actually half Chinese. It's the part you can't see, because I lived more than half my life in Chinese environments. I adopted a Chinese mother back in 1968. That's more than 50 years ago. She was from Zhongshan. She actually met the Chinese leader, Sun Zhongshan, in Tianjin in 1923, his last time there, when the Cantonese welcomed him and Song Qingling to Tianjin. So not only did I study Chinese education and its history, I lived it through a Chinese mother who only passed away in 2014. So we had almost 35 years together. I was very blessed by that. And OISE has been a wonderful home to me also since the early 1980s. After I got my PhD in London, I came here and really supported all of the opportunities for interaction and collaboration with China, also with Japan, with East Asia. So I'm just thrilled to see this organization with so many talented people bringing these connections. My favorite phrase in Chinese is 和而同, which means harmony without conformity. And I've always worked to promote dialogue and to feel it's so important for us as educators to create dialogue with the different civilizations of the world. And clearly China is one of the very rich civilizations in terms of education and its traditions. So I'm thrilled to be here with all of you. I want to congratulate the organizers. I know them quite well. Some have been in my classes, and I'm so impressed with the work they've done. Thank you so much.
So thank you, Professor He-ho, and for your insightful greetings. And we truly appreciate for your support as one of our main guides of our forum. Thank you so much. So this year, the theme of our annual forum is lightening the educational path and embracing diversity, fostering bonding and empowering minds. The forum wants to serve as a lighthouse and inviting educators, scholars, and stakeholders from diverse backgrounds to share their insights. And this year, we have organized 6 sub-forums and which invited the family education, art education, AI education, game-based education, nature education, and principals roundtable to discuss how to support the teacher's development. And we have over 50 guest speakers in our sub-forums to do the presentation through the whole forum. And you can find our detailed agenda here on the screen and also in our handbook. You can scan the QR code to access all the information about our forum. Now, let's welcome the co-chair representatives, Yifan Liu, who is one of the co-founders as well as the co-chair of internal of UTCEF to have the greeting speech. And Yifan is pursuing her PhD in social justice education at OEZ. And let's give her a warm welcome to have the speech. Yifan.
Thank you, Gladys. I'm hoping that everyone can hear me now.
Yifan, you don't have the sound. Can you unmute yourself?
Can you guys hear me now? I think I'm not muted.
So she's online. Just give some patience to her.
I think the audience can hear me online.
Yifan, can you say something?
Hello, can you hear me now? Okay, so I'll speak that way, right? Well, that's a lot of okay.
Okay, sorry, we just
Okay, perfect. So yeah, so I can start now. Yeah, so ladies and gentlemen, dear guests and friends, good morning and good evening. I hope everyone can hear me now. My name is Yifan Liu. I'm the co-chair of Internal and one of the co-founders of the University of Toronto China Education Forum. It is my greatest honor today to welcome each and every one of you to our second UTCF annual gathering. And as a PhD student at OEZ, focusing on sociology of education and with a lens of the Chinese transnationalism, it is through my own experiences and interactions with fellow colleagues that I have developed a deep passion for exploring the potent intersection of education, culture, and global interconnectedness. And reflecting on our journey, I remember very vividly that last year, my fellow co-chair Gladys proudly declared that from 0 to 1, we did it. And this year marks another significant milestone for UTCF. On behalf of 64 host members and volunteers, and super excited to share with you guys that this year we have surpassed expectations with over 1,000 registrations. And like Gladys mentioned earlier, that we were also very privileged to host more than 50 distinguished guest speakers who have generously agreed to share their invaluable expertise and insights in our 6 sub-forums. These experts come from different countries such as China, Canada, the UK, the US, Brazil, Ghana, etc., and also from very diverse backgrounds, including academia, school administration, frontline education, and educational corporations, which will be broadening our understanding with a wide range of viewpoints and perspectives. Our commitment this year extends beyond organizing panels and discussions. We hosted a Spring Festival Cultural Fair, which offered participants an immersive experience with various Chinese culture elements. And we also organized a pre-conference event titled A Lightning Moment in My Life, where we have received 87 educational stories from around the world, highlighting the strengths and resilience that education can foster. I believe our in-person guests today have already noticed that some of the pictures and stories are exhibited here at OEC Library. And actually the narratives, very inspiring, very moving, not only decorates our gathering today, but also serves as a beacon steering our discussion and efforts. Because at UTCF, we believe in the power of education as a bridge, like showcased by our logo here. Not just between China and the world, but also between individual experiences and global trends. And we're committed to discussing Chinese education, not only from an international perspective, but also as a reflection of our own experiences and beliefs. Because education, we believe, is a universal dialogue that is one that transcends geographical and cultural boundaries to touch every facet of human life. So I'd like to extend my deepest appreciation to everyone who has made this event possible. Your involvement embodies the spirit of collaboration and commitment that UTCF stands for. And I'm deeply grateful to the University of Toronto and also for OIZ for their continued support. And also a heartfelt thank you to Mr. Hayes, Professor Heiho, Professor Lee, Professor Akiyama, Professor Miller, and all of our guest speakers who contribute their profound knowledge during our forum. And lastly, I would like to also extend my special thanks to my outstanding teammates, including our co-chairs Gladys and Mingyi, and the entire UTCF team, whose dedication and efforts have been instrumental in bringing this event to fruition. So together, let us continue to challenge, to engage, to motivate, and to learn from one another as we strive for a more understanding and connected world through education. Yeah, so thank you all for joining us and hope you guys enjoy what UTCF offers this year and also in the future. Thank you so much.
So thank you, Yifan. So thank you, Yifan, and it's my pleasure to introduce another co-chair of our forum, and Mingyi, who is now the PhD student in the language and literacy education in OIZ. And in her PhD studies, Mingyi aims to explore the intersection between the shelter on colonialism and the language education policy in Ontario. Mingyi. So this year, we also have two interim co-chairs, and they are the candidates for UTCF 2025 co-chairs, Jingtong Zhang at the back, and who is the MS student at the higher education at OIZ, and Dongzhao Chen, here it is, and who is the recent MEd graduate at Education Leadership and Policy at OIZ. And thanks for your contribution to our forum. Now, I'm delighted to announce that the second University of Toronto China Education Forum, UTCF 2024, is officially open, and we sincerely hope that you will enjoy our forum. Now, let's move to our keynote speech session. First of all, let's welcome Dr. Jun Li, who is the professor at Western University. He is also the founding president of the Chinese Society of Education, and he will have the keynote speech with the title of Chinese Education as an International Narrative Challenge and Perspective. Let's welcome Dr. Li.
Good morning. And good evening if you are in China, and good day if you are somewhere else. What a pleasure and honor to be invited to deliver the keynote speech for the second U of T China Education Forum. And actually, it's always a pleasure for me to come back to the OIZ community, because I left here in 2008. From my postdoctoral fellowship and work with Professor Ruth Heiho that time over 2 years. Lots of sweet memories. I was given 10 minutes for this talk. So I will try to keep it as brief as possible. And okay, I got the timer here, wonderful. The topic is Chinese education as an international narrative, challenges and prospects. I actually, due to the time limit, I actually only have 4 points to make. So can you help? Okay, thank you so much, Gladys. So I will start from the narrative of Chinese education. I was originally trained as a historian. I always like to look at educational issues from a historic perspective. So I'll start from the history. If you are native Chinese, or if you learn some Chinese culture, you will know that Chinese education has some international outreach in the very ancient times, right? Probably since Tang Dynasty, that time when Xuanzang traveled to India, and shortly after that, monk Jianzhen traveled to Japan. And Xuanzang went to India as a Chinese learner. So that gives us some historical concept that Chinese education started from Chinese learning, right? And Jianzhen went to Japan, of course. He established the well-known Buddhist temple and school in Nara. I have got the chance to visit the temple a couple of times when I was working at the University of Tokyo. And later on, I think the first impression of Chinese education or learning in the European context, I have to mention Marco Polo. You're all familiar with his travel to China, and the book Travels of Marco Polo, or some of you may be familiar with. And in this, it's not a novel, right? In this kind of like a diaries or conversations or record memories, there are at least 3 places mentioned Chinese learning and education. The first place is what Marco Polo actually recall how his family communicate with Kublai Khan, the conversation. And Kublai Khan mentioned that if, he could be sent hundreds of priests learned in Christian to his empire, he will feel very glad. So that's very interesting. You can see the Chinese learning and education, and the impression is about religious learning, right? And the other 2 places, that's the one place mentioned about Xinguo, now Suzhou, and also Kinsai, now Hangzhou. They're 2 very prosperous city in ancient China, and I mentioned that China has good men, well-learned men in natural science, in philosophy, and in physics, medicine, and so on. So it's very interesting. So the narrative of Chinese education starts from Chinese learning and also the well-trained people in different disciplines in ancient times. So, but unfortunately, in the recent years, probably the mid 2010s, around that, with the decoupling between China and the US, and also the discourse developed in recent years, we don't see that much. That's why I will move to reality, how the narrative faces the reality. It's not kind of learning from each other and we build a better world. It's kind of, we don't want to see each other. So that's not something really we want to see as educator and the learner. So to me, I just feel I got the honor to lead a couple of international educational societies and got the experiences. And what I feel is we really need the dialogue and learning from each other. And Chinese education has much to offer. What I mean is, for example, you may recall the first sentence in Xunzi's on learning, right? The first sentence is learning should never stop, right? Should never stop. That means the learning is a lifelong process of your whole life, right? And if you recall what Confucius mentioned as, education should be without any boundaries or categories. In other words, in education should be like a diversity focused, inclusion, and so on. So that's a very, very important concept here. And don't forget what Professor Ruth Heyhoe just mentioned, a Chinese wisdom or philosophy that the harmony without conformity, right? That's what Professor Ruth Heyhoe just translated, 和而不同. I think that's the bigger mission for Chinese education in the world nowadays and in the future. Here, I'm not saying that the Chinese education is the only way that we should go ahead with it. I mean, in this world, diversity and inclusion becomes a must for every learner, for every educator, for every leader. We have leaders sitting here, right? So I think that's very important. In terms of prospects, what I can mention is there are too many. What I can mention is we have destroyed our relationship with our environment, our earth, our universe so much. And probably in the ancient times, the damage could be very, very minimal and controllable. But nowadays, it seems to me it's not controllable anymore. So we have to have the awareness how we have to, not only as human beings from different cultures, civilizations, how we should live together peacefully, with dialogue, understanding, and learning from each other, reciprocal learning, a concept I really appreciate very much. And more importantly, how we should live together on this earth and with our all we have. Isn't it a blessing we have all of this, but we as human beings, we have destroyed so much. So we don't have a harmonious relationship with our nature environment, unfortunately, with our planet. So that's the two main things here. One is the relationship among different peoples. And the second is the relationship of these peoples with the planet and the universe more broadly. So I really hope that the international narrative of Chinese education can contribute to these two big directions. Thank you very, very much. Due to time, I have to stop here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lee. And now we will have our second keynote speaker, Michio Akiyama, who is the Toronto-based scholar, composer, and artist. And he is an assistant professor of visual studies in the Daniels Faculty of Architecture, Landscape, and Design at the University of Toronto. And his speech today will be What Happens When. And welcome, Dr. Akiyama.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm really happy to be here. So today, what I'm going to do is talk a bit about my my practice as an artist and as a researcher. I'm going to do a little screen hygiene here. I'm going to talk a bit about my work, and then I'm going to talk about my teaching and show some student work to work through some of the ideas that I'm trying to impart and bring into my pedagogical environment. So I come from a few different worlds. I started out as a composer and performer of music, and then I went to art school. I did a BFA and an MFA, and then when I was doing my MFA, I decided that what I really wanted to be doing was research and writing, so I did a PhD in communications. But then in the middle of my PhD, I rediscovered art, and I realized that art is a really powerful place to work from because it allows for all sorts of possibilities and for curiosity and exploration that aren't necessarily open pathways in other disciplines. So in art, you can be wrong and be wrong very productively. In art, you can have conflict within your work and your thinking. You don't have to be right necessarily. Art is concerned with investigating the world in a curious and sincere and open sort of way. So over the years, I've kind of come up with these phrases, that helped me to think through the way that I approach the world as a practitioner, as a teacher, as a scholar. So I've come up with a few different ways of describing this, and they kind of come down to the same thing. So I like the idea of being asinine, of like being deliberately obstinate and kind of questioning everything. I love the idea of being a dilettante, which tends to have a kind of negative connotation, which about being sort of superficial, but really at its root, the word means to delight. It means to be excited about whatever you encounter. I love this phrase, working in bad faith. So what I often do in my work is I try to do things the wrong way in a very sincere, intentional way to see what happens, because the phrase for me, working in bad faith, means accepting the premise that something exists, but not accepting that you need to do things the right way in good faith in order to be a sort of felicitous participant in that discourse or that world. And then basically most of my work comes down to me asking the question, what happens when X? So I'm going to show you a couple of works of mine, more from my artistic practice, that for me are most embodying these kinds of investigations or questions. So the first work is from a few years ago. It was a collaboration. It's ongoing with a biology postdoc at the time at U of T named Dr. Brock Harper. And this piece came about because I read something about an apple growing region in China. This was years ago, where they suffered a really massive bee colony collapse, and it led to real concerns about this crop of apples being actually pollinated that year. And so as a response, what they did was they went out with little pots of flower pollen and paintbrushes, like humans did, and hand pollinated the blossoms. And that year they like tripled their yield of apples. And to me, it seemed like a really telling parable about human and natural interactions, in that in this case, you had humans who want apples and bees who don't care about apples, and the wanting apples led to more apples. But the thing is, the labor cost for hand pollinating apple blossoms eventually would become unmanageable for that crop. So I started thinking, like, what happens if there aren't any bees? Where do we get honey? And so this turned into an investigation of what it would mean for humans to make honey by hand without insect labor. And for me, this was a way of probing this idea of the labor value of non-human animals and forces. And so what we did was we went out and gathered flower nectar by hand. The work study who worked with me on this, I think, had the best work study job ever. We sat around in parks and cemeteries and talked and squeezed flowers. And so we didn't quite finish the project. We didn't get to the honey making part of this, which is going to happen in the fall of 2025 at Purdue, where Brock is now a professor. So we're going to try and reconstitute the chemical composition of a bee gut to make honey without the bee's body either. So that's the thing that I've been doing. And this generated, I wrote this paper on methods for collecting bee flower nectar, which is kind of actually Brock, who's a scientist and you would sort of stereotypically assume to be kind of straightforward, and he's actually come up with most of the weirdest ideas in this project. And he suggested that we write this paper that's sort of fake real science and then try and send it to a parasitic journal, so that we have fake real science being published in a real fake journal. But anyways, like in my practice, I'm really trying to inhabit other modes of thinking and investigation and expression in order to see what happens when you do something in bad faith. In this case, not necessarily playing with the scientific method, but stretching it a little bit. And this is another recent project. So I teach a graduate class in the Masters of Visual Studies program at Daniels. It's a sort of research methods course for artists, which sounds like a bit of a weird idea. But what we're trying to do in that class is disabuse ourselves of all the inherited ways of thinking that there's a certain way to do things in terms of writing and research. So a student of mine once said that when she sits down to write and she's writing in what is the expected academic form, she had this phrase, it speaks, it writes. So there's something moving through her that determines what she knows has to be there. So she knows that there has to be an argument in the first paragraph, and that has to be supported in a certain systemic way later on. And so what we do in this class is we investigate basically epistemology and how we know what we know. So I've been giving these writing prompts for a long time, and they're designed to make it very difficult to write in a conventional way. So there's lots of stuff about writing from the perspective of non-human others, or lots of double, triple, quadruple negatives and convoluted ways of phrasing things. So I made, with a graduate student during the pandemic, I made this writing portal, which you can visit and use. And one of the aspects of it, which unfortunately is not working because the very not open company OpenAI has changed the way that their API works. So we had done this part of this website where GPT-3 was trained on all the prompts I've ever written and would generate AI prompts that were basically in my style, because I was kind of annoyed that I didn't get to write in response to prompts, because you can't prompt yourself. So it's a tool that is freely available, and if you want to try it out, just the generated prompts don't work right now. But so in terms of how this relates to pedagogy and my work as a teacher, I really love this idea that is not super well known. It's from this guy who used to work down the street named Marshall McLuhan. And this is from some magazine piece he wrote on education. He wrote, "A probe is a means or method of perceiving. It comes from the world of conversation and dialogue. Like conversation, the verbal probe is discontinuous, nonlinear. It tackles things from many angles at once. Education on all levels has to move from packaging to probing, from the mere conveying of data to the experimental discovering of new dimensions of experience." So I love this idea of probing, and actually I think it helps to make sense of McLuhan's writing and ideas, which can seem kind of obtuse sometimes. He just wants to see what happens. What happens when this idea goes into the world, and once it's in the world, what do I glean? What do I learn from its inflection on things? So I'm going to show works from this one class that I don't teach it anymore, but it was a course called Time-Based Installation. So basically installation with media. And I always try to approach it as a very site-specific class and as a critical investigation of technology. So this one year, I had two students, Amanda Huang and Harrison Toryumi Gray, and they made this really beautiful piece. Whoops. Well, I don't see the play bar. Anyway, what it is it's a screen, a little LCD screen, and as when you start the piece, these phrases start to pop up in the screen, and eventually over time, they completely fill the frame so that it's just black. And it's this beautiful work that basically has a clock, and once it runs its clock, it is done. There's no resetting it. And there's something beautiful about the encounter with it being intelligible, with the text being intelligible only for a short bit of time, and then for the rest of time, it's opaque, even though the text is still there. So I was teaching this class during the pandemic, and as you can imagine, teaching online for a class that's supposed to be about relation to site is very difficult, because what is the site at that point? Their bedrooms, basically. And they didn't have access to the technology that they would usually have access to in the school environment. So, and also I think it was a small class, about 10 people, and maybe 8 of them were in China. And this class was from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. So 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. in China, which was brutal. And so my approach to teaching this was to think about instead of thinking about the limitations of it, I tried to think about the possibilities of, like, what does it mean to be thinking about place and technology in this distributed virtual way, and we don't have access to the equipment you usually would. So the final assignment that I designed was, I wanted them to document a work of installation that they didn't actually make, which so when you push that to its logical conclusion, if you didn't have to make it, you don't have to worry about gravity or budget or anything like that. It's a pure speculation. And the work that came out of it was some of the best student work that I've ever seen. So I'll try and hurry because I'm about a minute over here. This one piece from Zhengxu Pao, we were having a kind of not particularly germane to the class conversation about NFTs, which were really big at the time. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to make NFTs and make a lot of money. And I said, that's horrible. NFTs are awful and it's a bubble. And we had a debate about it. And he came back for his final project with this beautiful speculative work, which is there's this chair and you sit on the chair. And as you sit, it starts to mine Bitcoin. And you get to keep the Bitcoin for however long you sit on the chair. But the problem is the chair keeps getting hotter and hotter. So it's just such a clever meditation on the environment and the energy intensiveness of these technologies. And it was really powerful for me to see this pivot from somebody thinking, well, here's a thing that might make me some money, to something that he started to really investigate critically. And this is the last work I'll show, which is one of my favorite student works of all time. So this student, Cheng Sen-jin, who I don't remember where he was, but he was in China, and he designed, so he was an architecture student. I primarily teach architecture students in undergrad in my art studios. And he designed this dome that would replicate the light and climatic conditions of Toronto so that he could be sort of co-present in this digital telepresent sort of way with the feeling of being in Toronto. And I thought that was just such a beautiful and sad way of dealing with that isolation and that distance. So I'll wrap up here. I guess what I'm trying to impart here is whenever there's a way that something is supposed to be done, it's not that that's the wrong way. It's not that that way leads to problematic investigations, but I think it's always worth saying, well, what if I do it the opposite? What if I do it the wrong way? What happens when I do something and see what the results are? So thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Akiyama. And now it's time for our special activity today. And we have the privilege of engaging in a conversation with Dr. John Miller. And Dr. John Miller has been working in the field of holistic education for over 40 years. And he wrote and edited more than 20 books on holistic learning and contemplative practice in education. Today, we have Dong Zhao conducting the conversation with Dr. Miller, and we have collected some questions from our audience before the opening ceremony, and we are so excited to explore these topics during our conversation. And welcome, Dr. Miller.
So hi, everyone. My name is Dong Zhao, and I'm so glad to be here to interview Professor Miller today to represent everybody. And so basically, we will invite Professor Miller to introduce us to holistic education. And here's the first question. So Professor Miller, sorry, can you help us to introduce some of the core concepts and principles and a little brief history about holistic education's development?
Yeah, so the main thing about holistic education is trying to reach the whole child, the mind, the body, and the spirit. And unfortunately, most of the education in the developed world has been about the mind. I'm not even sure it's done well with the mind, but basically totally ignoring the body and the spirit. So holistic education is to try to reach all of the child. Yeah. So the principles, what I write about in my book, The Holistic Curriculum, I have three basic principles: balance, inclusion, and connection. So balance, I use the yin and the yang idea, that you have these two energies, these complementary energies, and they flow through all of life and into the classroom. And so we know that the yang is the more masculine, the yin is the more receptive. And unfortunately, again, a lot of our classrooms, the dominant, it tends to be very yang, individual achievement. Again, so trying to bring both energies into the classroom. And then inclusion is, again, reaching all kinds of children. And to do that, we need a broad range of teaching strategies. So I talk about three main ones, which is transmission. That's what I'm doing now. I'm talking to you. So that's like the teacher leading. Then the transaction. So that's more interactive between the teacher and the student, or the students and the students. And then transformation. And the transformation for me is trying to nurture the inner life of the child. So using all three, the holistic, sometimes people think, well, holistic education it's just transaction and transfer. It's all three. And I suggest the teacher try to develop a rhythm using the three. So they develop their own. And again, really, again, what I've learned so much, particularly from Taoism, is the importance of energy, and that the classroom is an energy system. So the more that you can nurture that energy, the more successful you'll be as a teacher. And then finally, connection, which may be in a sense the most important, that trying to see how everything is interconnected. And so I talk about 6 connections. I won't go through all 6, but one, like being connected to the earth. So the student realizes their connection to the earth. So those are the 3 main principles that I talk about. Yeah.
Thank you so much for this answer, Professor Miller. I think everyone just have a brief idea about what is holistic education. And now we're moving on to the next question. So because this forum is about China's education and its communication to the international society, so I would like to know more, and I believe everyone else did. So can you share us some of the examples of the holistic education's practices and curriculum happen in China and also in North American society? And maybe you can also share some of the challenges you faced or other scholars face during this process. Thank you.
Yeah, so in North America, the most famous holistic education approaches have been Waldorf and Montessori. And again, and also in China, I understand there's a lot of interest in Waldorf education. And I was on a workshop, it was a conference on holistic education that was online. It was hosted by Teachers College Columbia because they have an office in Beijing. And so they had 2 principals from China. One was from Taiwan, but the other one was from a Waldorf school. And the Waldorf school had been named the best school in China. So I thought it was amazing that Waldorf was recognized that well in China. So my own work is, by the way, my main book in terms of describing the holistic education is called The Holistic Curriculum. A year ago, a student came from China, Lin Qing, and she translated my book, The Holistic Curriculum, into Chinese, which has just been published. And I'm very excited about this. And the fact that she comes from, I'm probably don't pronounce this right, but Hozang University of Science and Technology in Wuhan, and they published the book. The fact that there would be so much energy put into translating this book and publishing it, I think is a very again, exciting thing in terms of holistic education in China. In my own work, there's a school in Toronto. It's the Equinox Holistic Alternative School. It started in 2009, and they use the holistic curriculum as kind of the guide for that school. And it's the biggest alternative elementary school in Toronto, and they have a waiting list of every year people wanting to get into that school. And actually, there are 3 other schools in Toronto that have taken the holistic curriculum and they use it as a guide to building a program. So let's face it, the holistic curriculum, holistic education is still on the margins. There are very few countries that said we're going to do holistic education at a national level. So we have pockets here and pockets there. So we have, the main thing that I would say is the more that people see how things are interconnected, the more they'll move to holistic education. And again, I think more and more people are awakening to how things are interconnected. So that is why I believe that there is a real future for holistic education.
Thank you so much, Professor Miller. And last question is, can we please have like several words from you for the future development of holistic education? What kind of like future you would expect to see maybe?
Well, that's just what I just said. I think that is really the future. And I have gone to many countries in Asia. They have societies for holistic education, and the people that are involved in it are very committed. Like it's just, and I was just at a conference in Oregon on holistic education, and there were people that I knew from Korea. And in Korea, on the DMZ, there's a school for peace education. Just couldn't believe people would build a school on the border between North Korea and South Korea about peace. And those are the exciting things about holistic education. There are really some amazing people doing amazing work. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for today's participation, Professor Miller. And I think this is the end of the interview. I hope everyone enjoyed. Thank you.
So let's give a big thank you to Dr. Miller again. And thank you so much for having this enlightening conversation with Dr. Miller. And also, we are so grateful for these valuable perspectives and the knowledge he has shared to us today. And now, before we closing our opening ceremony, I would like to express my grateful gratitude to all of our guests and friends, both in person and online, to join us. And thank you for participating in our opening ceremony. And after the opening ceremony, we will have our first subforum, the Family Education Subforum, which happened here at library as well as online from 10:30 to 12:30. And welcome all of you to join the subforum, and we will have 7 excellent guest speakers in our Family Education Forum. And you can find the full schedule and information about our guest speakers in our handbook. And feel free to join any subforum that the topic you're interested in. And also, I want to announce we also have our educational event here, a lightning moment in my life. So before our forum started, we collected a lot of participants to send their pictures to show the educational stories that is lightening their whole life. So we have a lot of pictures just on the board. So you can see the picture and you will have the stickers. You can get the stickers from our reception desk, and you can place the sticker in the bottle, which is enlighten you and which story you like the most. And we will have 10 winners to have our gift for this event. And also we also welcome you to write your own story, and you can tape on the board at the back. And we also have the photo booth at the back, and be free to take the pictures and enjoy the rest of the forum. So now we will have 10 minutes break, and we will start our first forum, family education. And the online people also can take the break for 10 minutes, and we will start around 10:45 for our first forum. And thank you so much for coming. And this is the opening ceremony. Thank you so much. Oh, sorry. Just last thing was to mention for all our in-person guests, we have the gift for you. So you can get the UTCF pin at the reception desk. And also we prepared a pack of seeds of light. So for all our in-person participants, and you can get 1 seed for the flower and get free to plant this seed at your home. And the reason we do this activity is we want you can witness the growth power brought by the light. And we also wish you that you can find your own light in your journey and grow towards your dream. And thank you all, and hope you have a great day. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. So we will start our family education sub-forum now.
Hello, everyone. You can scan our code to check our handbook and register our other sub-forms.
大家都可以扫描二维码来查看我们的手册，并注册其他的分论坛。
Also, you can scan our, also there's our WeChat group for the text live broadcast. And you also can scan this code to enter these groups.
这些呢是我们的文字直播微信群，你可以扫码进入。
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our sub-form, Family Education. My name is Hongling Liu, and I will be your English host today. Joining us online is Xinyan Chen, who will be our Chinese host.
大家好，欢迎参加我们的家庭教育分论坛。今天的英文主持是刘红玲，我是中文主持人钱欣妍。
First, we would like to state the land acknowledgement before today's sub-form. We wish to acknowledge this land on which the University of Toronto operates. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. Today, this meeting place is still the home to many indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to walk on this land. Today's theme is effective companionship, the core of building a healthy family and the key to emotional support. We aim to assist parents in understanding and managing the challenges faced during the various development stages of children and adolescents.
今天的主题是有效陪伴，构建健康家庭的核心与情感支持的关键。此次分论坛，我们旨在帮助家长理解并应对儿童和青少年在不同发展阶段时所面临的挑战。
This is today's agenda. The educators will speak first, and followed by parents sharing their stories. We are joined by 4 distinguished educators and 3 experienced parents who will share their insights and experiences. The goal for us today's discussion.
这是我们今天的论坛流程。教育专家们会首先发言。我们邀请了4位杰出的教育专家和3位经验丰富的家长来与我们共同分享他们的研究成果和教育经验。希望这些讨论能对在座的每一位在今后的家庭教育方面都有所帮助。
Dr. Li Xingren is an associate professor and Academy of Future Education of Xi'an Jiaotong Liverpool University. Well, she also served as the co-director of the Research Center for Family Education. Her research focuses on family child rearing and preschool development.
任立新博士是西交利物浦大学未来教育学院副教授、博士生导师，未来教育学院家庭教育研究中心的联合主任。他主要从事家庭养育与学前儿童发展研究。
Let's begin with Dr. Ren's presentation. She will be discussing Chinese family relationship patterns and implications for child development. Welcome, Dr. Ren.
让我们有请任博士发表演讲。他的演讲主题是中国家庭关系对孩子成长的影响。欢迎任博士。
Hello, everybody. I hope you can see my screen. Can you see my screen? Okay, great. So it's my honor to be here to present my research at the China Education Forum. Because of the time limit, so I'm not able to share all of the research that I have done, but I'm going to share with you a recent study that was just published last month to demonstrate a new approach to studying family relationship, and I hope that you will find this study very interesting. So when we think about a family, we can think about it as an ecological system. So if you think about this as a system, you will know that actually within a system, there are different parts, there are different components. And for family, we can consider it as an integrated system made up by different subsystems, and the different subsystems, they are interdependent. For example, if you are thinking about a couple, there is a marital subsystem, If they have children, which means that they need to shoulder parenting responsibilities together. And then there's a new system emerging, a co-parenting subsystem. And then if they have kids, the mother and the father, they will also form a different subsystem with their own child. So the core of the family systems theory is that the whole system is greater than the sum of its parts. And these different subsystems, they often affect each other. And sometimes we call them spillover effects, which means that the characteristics and relationships of one subsystem can influence those of another. And in a lot of the research using this theoretical framework has looked at the associations between different types of dyadic relationships, which means that they focus on how one subsystem may affect the other subsystem. For example, many researchers have looked at how marital relationships may influence their co-parenting relationships and may influence, for example, their own parenting behaviors or their relationships with their children. However, in recent years, there has been a shift in the approach to studying the family system. So we are not solely looking at the interrelationships among these subsystems, but we are trying to move away from dyadic relationships to finding out about patterns of relationships within the family system. So within each family, we know there are a lot of different dyadic relationships, right? We talked about marital relationship, co-parenting relationship, father-child relationship, mother-child relationship. If grandparents are living with the family, then there are like more relationships, the relationship between grandparent and the adult parent, and between grandparents and grandchildren as well. However, moving away from looking at these dyadic relationships individually or looking at how they affect each other, we want to find out how these relationships, they can collectively form different patterns of affective atmosphere within the family. So to be able to look at relationships from this approach, we have to look at all these relationships together and see what kind of different patterns may emerge if we look at all these relationships collectively. So I'm going to skip these 2 pages on existing literature and going straight to my current study. So in our recent study, we have 2 objectives. The first is to examine family relationship patterns among Chinese urban families with preschool-aged children. And by doing so, we try to include as many family subsystems as possible, but we didn't include grandparents into our study. We solely focused on parents and their children, but we were trying to include both fathers and mothers because we know fathers and mothers, they can have very different perceptions of these relationships. For example, mothers may feel that the marriage is not so good, but fathers may feel it's okay, right? So it's very common for people to have different perceptions of these relationships. So we included marital subsystem, we measured marital satisfaction of both mother and father. Co-parenting subsystem, we asked both mothers and fathers to report their co-parenting relationship. So basically how supportive their spouse is in supporting their parental role. Mother-child subsystem, we asked the mothers to report their relationship with their child. And father-child subsystem, we ask fathers to report their relationship with their child. So included these 4 different subsystems into our study, and we asked both mothers and fathers to report these relationships. And the second objective was to examine how these different family relationship patterns may relate to children's social and behavioral competence. So we recruited over 300 families from Nanjing, and the sample was relatively diverse, and we used escalation measures to measure the above 4 subsystems I just mentioned. So the results showed that we found 4 different types of family relationship patterns. using latent profile analysis. And some of you may be familiar with statistics, some of you maybe not. So I'm not going to go into statistics, but to show you some characteristics of these 4 different patterns. So the first pattern, I call them unbalanced families. So if you look at this orange line, so here is how you are supposed to look at this figure. So here you see all these indicators, basically all the dyadic relationships we have included in finding out the different patterns. So here, for example, if you see an M, it's mother reported. If you see a F, it's father reported. So here you see mother reported marital satisfaction, father reported marital satisfaction, mother reported co-parenting. So for co-parenting, we have 2 different dimensions. One is positive, supportive co-parenting. One is negative, undermining co-parenting. And it's the same, fathers reported these 2 dimensions as well. And mothers reported 2 aspects of mother-child relationship. One is closeness, how close the mother is with her child, and conflict, like the level of conflict between the mother and the child. And it's the same for the father. So we have all these different indicators. And based on these indicators, we came up with these 4 different patterns. And so the first one, the orange one, I call this unbalanced because mothers and fathers, they reported quite differently on their perceptions of these relationships. So mothers reported low marital co-parenting and mother-child relationships. So basically, mothers feel that all these relationships she had experienced were relatively poor in quality within this sample, of course. And however, fathers reported moderate quality relationships. So basically, according to fathers, marital relationship, co-parenting relationship, and father-child relationship were not so bad. But according to mothers, they were relatively poor in quality. So unbalanced in the sense that mothers and fathers, they had unbalanced perceptions of relationships. And the second type, I call this compensatory families, which is quite interesting. So here, if you look at this blue line, you see that these families are pretty poor in almost all of these relationships because their scores were the lowest among the 4 groups. However, there is one exception, which is mother-child closeness is relatively high, is among the highest. And mother-child conflict is in the middle, so not the highest level of conflict. So basically, the reason why I call this type of family compensatory families is because all of these relationships were poor in quality. However, mothers were making compensatory efforts to build a close relationship with their child. So if you are a mother, I think you can relate to that. So for example, if you have a poor marriage, if your husband is not very supportive, but you may still try to be a good mother, try your best to be a good mother, try to build a good relationship with your child. I think part of the intention is to compensate for the poor relationships, in other aspects of the family life. And actually, we have over 20% of the families belong to this type. And the third type, I call them moderately cohesive families, which is very easy to understand. So if you look at the red line here, almost all of the relationships were medium in quality. So I call them moderately cohesive, and it represented almost half of the sample. And the last one here, the brown line here, is highly cohesive families. We have about 24% of the families that belong to this pattern. So basically, all of these dyadic relationships were high in quality. So these are the 4 patterns of family relationships we had found based on these indicators. So then we looked at the implications for children's social and behavioral competence. So we looked at 2 aspects of child outcomes. One is social skills, and the other is problem behavior. So we asked the primary caregivers to report children's social skills and problem behaviors. So what we have found was that unbalanced families, the orange one here, if you look at the bar, for social skills, the taller, the better. And for problem behaviors, the taller, the worse, which means that they have more problem behaviors. And here you can see that children from unbalanced families, they had the lowest social skills, but the highest problem behaviors. So basically, children from unbalanced families, they had the worst social and behavioral outcomes. And for highly cohesive families, so here you see that they have the best social skills and the least problem behaviors. So I think it is expected, right? So we would expect children growing up in cohesive families, they would develop better in their social emotional development. And compensatory families, if you remember, it's basically all the relationships were poor in quality except mother-child closeness. And interestingly, comparing to unbalanced families, children from compensatory families actually had better social skills and fewer problem behaviors compared to unbalanced families. However, compared to highly cohesive families, children from compensatory families, they had worse outcomes. And children from compensatory families, they did not differ significantly, although you see a slight difference. However, in statistics, they were not significantly different. So children from compensatory families, they had similar levels of social skills and problem behaviors compared to moderately cohesive families. And for moderately cohesive families, children from this type of families, they had better outcomes than unbalanced families, but they had worse outcomes compared to highly cohesive families. So I think if you look at this set of findings, the most interesting one would be the unbalanced type had the worst child outcomes. And compensatory families, although there's only one relationship that was high in quality, however, that could have some buffering effect or have some protective effect on children's social and behavioral competence. And what are the implications of this study? So the first thing is when we think about Chinese families, and I think when I was doing my PhD in the US, what I found was that in the literature, actually, people still have that stereotypical image of Chinese families. For example, they think Chinese parents are all tiger parents. And I think still common people may still have this image of Chinese parenting. However, within Chinese families, there's a lot of variation. So there are diverse types of family relationship patterns among Chinese families today. And also another implication would be we need to recognize the risks and challenges within unbalanced and compensatory families. So for unbalanced families, it's interesting, we did not find unbalanced families in which fathers perceived all those relationships to be poor in quality, but mothers felt, yeah, everything is okay. No, we didn't find that type. So for unbalanced families, we found that it's mothers who felt the relationships were very poor in quality. And for compensatory families, it's very interesting. It's mothers who were making compensatory efforts, but not fathers. We did not find a group where all the dyadic relationships were poor except father-child relationship. We did not find that type. So we have some theories to explain this finding. So overall, I think we need to pay attention to mothers' well-being because it seems like mothers are likely to have like worse perceptions of family relationships. And it's perhaps because, mothers, they take a lot of responsibilities for taking care of the kids, and they are trying to balance different roles, right? Because many of these mothers, they were working at the same time. So perhaps it's because mothers are encountering more challenges when they have children. So we need to pay more attention to mothers' well-being, and also at the same time we need to increase fathers' involvement and also involvement of other family members, also support from the larger society. So I think my time is up, and I hope that you'll find this study interesting. And if you want to read more, you can look up for the full article. Thank you.
Thank you so much for Dr. Ren's.
感谢任博士的精彩演讲。
We'll continue to explore the preschool stage with Ms. Mo Sun. Ms. Sun, involved in several national early childhood projects and has consulted for various child-related companies. She will offer valuable advice for parents of preschool children and present on early childhood development. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Sun.
接下来我们将讨论学前阶段，孙梦老师会就早期儿童发展进行介绍。孙梦老师参加了多个国家级早期儿童发展项目，为多家儿童相关公司提供了咨询服务。他将作为学前阶段的专家讲师来提供宝贵的建议。欢迎孙梦老师。
今天也很高兴跟大家来分享，就我在学龄前儿童这个部分的一些专业的建议。因为我以前其实是在美泰、乐高这样的玩具公司做研发的工作，所以其实经常会有朋友来找我问说，哎呀，我给什么年龄段的孩子应该送什么礼物啊，买什么玩具啊？但实际上很多时候大家关注的都是我要买什么东西，用什么东西，而忽略了就是如何去用这些东西。所以今天我也很开心有机会跟大家分享一些互动相关的一些知识。然后一谈到儿童发展，其实很多时候我们会从理论的角度更多的去探讨孩子本身他各个阶段的发展需求是什么样的。但实际上其实我们今天再去谈儿童的发展目标的时候，要从2个方面去看。一个呢是社会到底需要什么样的孩子，也就是说这个孩子未来长大他需要有社会的价值，这个也是他成长的一个很重要的目标。那另外一点呢，就是从理论的角度，从孩子自身成为一个健全的人的角度，他要有哪些能力技能，他才能实现未来的这些社会价值和自我实现的一些目标。所以我今天从2个角度跟大家去做一个简单的沟通。首先呢，就是社会需要什么样的人，就大家会发现这几年包括小红书啊、抖音呀、视频号，其实作为家长，你经常去刷这些东西，你会发现大家都有很多鸡娃的收集到很多鸡娃的这种信息。比如说这个小朋友3岁要学英文，然后小朋友到了几岁要数学能力达成什么样，然后要大脑的发展，要各种这个学科知识的一些吸收，然后包括我们也有很多这种早教的 APP 啊，孩子要去做，甚至去在很小一个年龄段他要去上网课。所以不得不说，就是我们在很长的一段时间里边，小朋友的发展是基于社会对或者说同龄人对他的一个需求和要求。所以你会发现如果我们在社交媒体里，我们会看到的孩子的这个发展的需求，可能是他的专注力要好，这个孩子要有独立性，然后包括他学科知识要很好，他还得情商高，还得能社交，然后他还得有一技之长，有各种兴趣，要考级，要比赛。所以这个是我们看到包括我们现在在一些影视作品里边，像前段时间这个小舍得里边这个蒋欣和他的儿子也是一个鸡娃的一个状态。所以其实也是很反映我们现在在讲儿童早期发展的时候，我们看到的都是我们觉得社会需要孩子去掌握这些技能，这是他们早期发展的目标。但实际上其实前段时间Chat 4O 也出来了，然后大家其实也会看到他能做的事情，包括他在以前我们说人工智能没有情感，但其实现在他也能够通过识图的方式察觉你的情感，并且调整他自己的情绪。所以其实我们也看到，不管是在认知的能力上面，还是社会情绪的能力上面，现在人工智能都在不断的突破，而且其实用的时间很快。所以在过去的5到8年的时间里边，其实各种的 这个高校，包括世界经济论坛，其实每年都会出不同的报告，去跟我们讲说现在的世界是什么样的，未来孩子要去面对的世界是什么样的，包括我们现在已经到了教育4.0的一个阶段，也就是说我们从工业化的时代已经要走向科技改变的这个信息技术的一个时代。那这个时代它对孩子的要求其实也是在不断的变化的，就是所以如果大家有机会和时间，其实也可以去看一下这些报告，包括近2年其实。世界经济论坛每年都在重新定义我们到底需要孩子未来有哪些技能才能在人工智能的世界里边获得成功。所以我并不觉得说人工智能会取代很多的劳动力，但我觉得我们的孩子确实是需要获得一些我们可能以前根本没有注意到的一些技能，让他能够更好的去dancing with这些 AI 的东西，让他们能够更好的利用这些 AI 的工具去实现自己的自我价值。那么我今天就想摘一点点跟大家去做一下交流。那在去年的世界经济论坛的报告里面，其实他第一次提出了4.0教育4.0时代孩子应该拥有的一些技能的点。那你会发现，其实学科知识在最下面。那这些东西其实只是孩子需要发展的技能当中很小的一个部分。但是往往也是我们现在最关注的一个部分，但实际上在未来可能学科知识完全可以由 AI 替代的这个时代，你问他什么，他可能1秒钟就回答你。那我们当然学还是要学的，但实际上我们更重视的是你有了这些知识，你如何去用它。我现在也有了 AI 这个工具，我如何给它指令，让它去分析这些数据，这些指令是需要我们给到 AI 的。所以其实大家会看到我用红色的这个框框圈出来的社会性，包括自我调节的能力，其实这个才是未来你可以跟机器、跟科技产生质的差异的一些孩子的技能点。包括我们其实现在也慢慢开始重视成长型思维啊，包括孩子的韧性啊、好奇心、探索欲，包括他的适应性，包括跟别人的沟通协作的一些能力。那这个也是。我觉得在过去的可能在我们传统的这种教育体系下，至少我在学校里边可能很难去培养出来的，但实际上恰恰是这些东西，往往是未来能拉开小朋友之间差距的一些点。然后刚才我说这些，其实就是我们 top down 来看，到底社会需要我们的孩子往哪些方面去发展，拥有哪些技能。那么我们再从 bottom up 去看，就是孩子自己本身成长，他要变成一个健全的人，他需要有哪些技能？大家肯定，比如说对于这种安全型依恋关系，肯定是比较了解的，因为我们经常在亲密关系里面谈到这些，就是你只有自己是一个拥有安全型依恋关系的人，你才能跟别人处得好。那所谓的处得好，就是不管是你的伴侣，不管是你的家人。所以当我们把依恋关系和小朋友的这个家庭风格，就其实刚才任教授也提到了一些就是不同类型的家庭风格，当然这个跟家长的参与度和家长对孩子的一些反应是有关系的。就是我们会看到，如果你的家庭风格是纠缠型的，是困惑型的，或者是互不干涉型的，其实你的小朋友他在成长的过程当中就会慢慢变成就是有很大的概率他就会变成不同类型的这些这个依恋类型。那这些依恋类型又会导致他在处理跟其他人的亲密关系呢，他长大以后跟一起工作的人，跟他一起生活的人，跟他未来的亲密关系，他的伴侣也会有很多的问题的出现。所以因为我其实也做家庭的咨询，做心理咨询做了很长一段时间，就是小朋友，包括我接触很多青少年、成年人，他们在自己的学业生活当中有很大的情绪上面的问题，或者一些焦虑、抑郁，甚至是没有包括我们说抑郁，其实很多时候他没有驱动力，他觉得很多事情都他不感兴趣，觉得生活没有意义，就我们所说的这个空心儿人。其实你追溯到他具体问题的根源，都能去聊到他童年的一些经历，包括跟他父母的一些关系。那这个也是为什么我说因为今天我所要聊的都是学前的孩子，0到6岁的孩子。就我们说 学前其实培养他、发展他的重点，真的不是在于他的认知，就是我说认知更多是指他的学习、他的学科知识，而更多的是在我们要帮他去建立一个很好的心理行为的模式，至少让他有这个很好的倾向。那未来他在接触更大的社交面的时候，他进入学校，他进入工作，进入社会，他接触越来越多人的时候，他才能用这些在小的时候给他打下的积淀，帮助他去在后期的生活当中去社会化，去更好的实现自己的一个价值。所以呢，就是大家其实去看Dweck 他之前就有去讲过，就是能够跟孩子形成安全性依恋关系的照料者，通常有这5大特点。因为以前我们更多的研究就是亲子的关系，更多是说妈妈跟小孩儿，但实际上我们现在比如说在中国，你的这个家庭的系统也是非常复杂的。有些时候可能外公外婆、爷爷奶奶、祖父母也会过来帮助照料孩子，甚至有些家庭他会请阿姨。那这个阿姨可能更多的是陪伴孩子的这个人。那不管是什么一个角色，其实只要是跟孩子长期生活在一起，照料他的生活起居，跟他一起互动的，那我们都可以说是他的主要照料者。那如果你想培养一个有安全性依恋关系的孩子，就意味着你一定要做下面这5件事儿。那么你会看到，其实都是跟互动相关的。包括很多时候，我遇到一些妈妈，她们自己非常焦虑，她们自己也鸡娃，他们自己也有很多同龄人去互相比较彼此的孩子。那你会发现他自己的情绪就是有问题的，可能他自己就非常的焦虑。他也会把这些情绪传递给小孩儿，然后包括我觉得在中国，其实很多时候我们不太跟孩子小的时候，可能你还会更多的去亲孩子啊，抱抱孩子，但是你孩子越来越大，你会发现这种行为越来越少，甚至到了小学，你可能就不做这些事情了。包括我今天跟我一个朋友在聊天，他说他女儿现在上小学，刚上小学，在做作业的时候。他女儿就是因为没有规划好，就是这个写这个字儿写了几行之后，到下边地儿不够了。然后就写不完了，所以他女儿就崩溃了，就哭了。然后他就说，他就赶紧就过来帮他女儿想办法嘛，就是因为他不想让他女儿哭，他觉得他不应该用哭这种方式来解决自己的这个问题，因为也解决不了问题，所以他就帮他女儿想一些办法，比如说再多加1页纸啊，或者擦了之后再重新写啊，就是不管什么办法，他女儿都是在爆哭，就是没有想要跟他好好讨论这个问题。我就跟他讲，我说其实你有没有想过，你女儿可能不需要你帮她解决问题，她只需要倾诉，她只需要你倾听理解，她只需要抱你哭一会儿，她可能就好了，好了之后她可能就能继续她的任务了。所以我觉得很多时候我们其实遇到孩子的一些问题的时候，我们上来都会去想我怎么去帮他解决这个问题，但实际上我们想跟孩子去建立一个很好的亲子关系，首先就是倾听和理解。那这一点其实很多时候我们家长忽略掉了，不是说他不愿意去做，只是他没有意识到他其实可以先去同理孩子，然后再去帮助孩子、引导孩子去做正确的一些决策。所以我们就说儿童早期的发展，0到6岁这个阶段，更多的其实是我们帮他奠定一个很好的人格的倾向。所以我们真正要在0到6岁这个阶段去关注的点，实际上是我们要培养孩子的自身价值，就是他觉得我有用，我在家里我说的话是有人听到的，并且我被赋能去做很多事情。还有一点呢，就是对他人的信任感。那这个也是有些家长他可能在教育的过程当中，他会用一些善意的谎言呀，或者说想要鼓励激励孩子去做一些事情，所以就是假装答应孩子一些东西，但事后不去兑现，然后这种其实也会造成孩子对你的信任感是下降的。然后还有就是好奇心、探索欲，包括有时候祖父母在带孩子的时候可能会比较焦虑，说，你赶紧的，你那个这个东西不许碰或者怎么样的。然后其他的呢，就是我觉得更多的就是跟他的一些态度品质相关的，比如说他要有能听能看的能力，他要尽情的有游戏的这个空间和想象的能力，包括他可以自己独处，他不用一直黏着父母或者黏着另外一个人，他可以自己玩一会儿。所以我们就说，其实真正儿童发展的关键的核心在于人跟人的互动。那我们为什么管这种互动叫做活性成分？就是我觉得大家都也刷牙，大家都也知道，就是 牙膏里面其实分两类，一个是活性成分，一个是非活性成分。那这些活性成分其实是真正有效的那些帮助你防止你的龋齿的，但是呢，非活性成分它也有用，比如说它能让这个牙膏更顺口，让大家更能接受，然后让这个牙膏保持一个顺滑性，它也有用。但是呢，真正核心有效的成分其实是我们所说的活性成分，那这个也是我们所说的就是关系，就是你跟孩子的这个关系，其实才是对他的大脑发展，对他早期的不管是认知体格还是社会情绪上面的发展是非常重要的，奠定一个很重要的基础的。所以呢，我们就说back to 我最开始讲的，虽然我一直在做玩具的研究，我也做了很长时间玩具的研发，但实际上你会发现玩什么可能不重要。怎么玩才是最重要的，所以我们说亲子互动其实才是早期发展当中最重要的核心的活性成分。那我们怎么才能促进亲子互动？那我也有一个视频可以给大家看，尤其针对于比较年龄小的孩子，他可能自己的语言能力和行为认知还没有那么强的时候，我们怎么跟孩子去更高效的互动
？Did you know that you can help build a child's brain? Everyday interactions can have a big impact on developing brains throughout childhood, starting even before babies can talk.
Scientists call this serve and return, like a game of tennis or ping pong. A child serves by showing an interest in something, and the adult responds in a supportive way.
Finding moments throughout the day to do it is easy and fun, and you'll be building strong brains. You can use 5 steps to practice serve and return with any child. Step 1, share the focus.
When a child is interested or curious, you can see it. What's this? It's a stroller.
Watch this child look at something in a book. Right there, pointing shows interest. So does making a sound, like this child. And mom is paying close attention.
See baby moving those little arms and legs and focusing on the ball? That's a serve.
The key is paying attention to what the child is noticing.
Oh, you like those guys too?
Look at grandpa sharing the focus.
By noticing serves, you will help build curiosity and you'll strengthen your relationship.
Step 2, support and encourage.
You can return a child's serve by saying a word of encouragement.
That's right. Pretty good.
Watch grandpa return this serve by saying thank you.
Thank you.
Even a facial expression can encourage a child. Or emotion, like this mom dancing.
You can also pick up the object that the child is pointing to and bring it closer.
We need help to sit her down.
Things like helping and playing with a child let them know that their thoughts and feelings are heard and understood. Step 3, name it.
Yeah, the puppy, see the windows, the house.
When you return a child's serve by naming what they are seeing, doing, or feeling, you make important language connections in their brain.
He's got bumps all over him, huh?
This brain building happens even before a child can talk or understand your words.
You can name anything, a person, a thing, an action, a feeling, or a combination.
Clean up, everybody do your shit.
When you name what a child is focused on, you help build understanding of the world around us and what to expect from it.
The baby's sitting. Ooh, the baby's sitting in the back seat of the car.
You like those? Those are raisins. You have raisins all the time.
Naming also gives a child words to use later and shows that words are important to you.
Step 4, take turns back and forth.
Taking turns helps children learn self-control and how to get along with others.
Waiting is crucial. When you return a serve, give the child a chance to respond.
How are you? I'm good. How are you?
Note that the caregiver waits here for the next serve.
See this toddler navigating a new adventure? Grandpa is waiting patiently, returning serves by asking questions and then waiting to see what happens next.
You want covered? Are you cold? You like that?
Yeah.
By waiting, you give the child time to develop ideas and build confidence and independence.
Step 5, practice endings
因为时间的原因，我觉得不都放完了。然后其实就是非常简单的方法，尤其对0到3岁的孩子是非常好的亲子互动的方式。所以呢，我觉得不管在座的各位是家长还是老师，其实我觉得这种方法都是非常好的，也很高兴今天有机会分享给大家。
Thank you for Ms. Sun's presentation. As we wrap up our insightful discussion on preschool child development and parenting strategies, we now turn our attention to the next critical phase of a child's educational journeys. Transitioning from preschool to primary school brings its own set of challenges and opportunities.
感谢孙峰老师的精彩演讲。在我们对学前儿童发展和育儿策略的深入讨论后，现在我们将关注孩子教育旅程的下一个重要阶段。当孩子从幼儿园进入小学，由于教育条件和生活环境的改变，必然要面临许多新的问题。
Ms. Ling Lan, a positive discipline parent instructor from the US, will concentrate on issues relevant to families with primary school age children. Let's warmly welcome Ms. Lan to share her experience on fostering effective communication and development during the primary school years.
兰玲老师是一位国家2级心理咨询师、非暴力沟通培训师以及美国认证家长讲师。他将关注小学阶段家庭面对的问题。让我们热烈欢迎兰玲老师来分享他在小学阶段促进有效沟通和发展的专业知识，来帮助各位家长有效的应对。欢迎兰玲老师。
大家好。那我今天分享的主题是什么样的亲子关系是孩子渴望的？刚才大家已经介绍过我了，所以这边就过哈。就是开场，我想跟大家分享一个我自己的故事。这个左边的这个小姑娘就是我哈。小时候的我就是爸爸妈妈经常给我贴一些标签哈。我不知道大家有没有被贴过标签哈。我被贴过的标签印象很深刻的是，妈妈觉得我吃饭很慢，动作慢啊。那小时候的我的爸爸妈妈经常会给我贴标签，他们会认为我吃饭慢、胆小、被人欺负、没用哈。那实际的场景是什么呢？就是当时因为咽不下去，吞咽的问题，我经常把饭含在嘴里，然后我妈就是我奶奶就会追着我一直喂饭哈，2、3个小时。然后还有一件事情让我印象很深刻的就是在学前班的时候，妈妈带我去同学家跟父母对峙，因为跟我同学的父母对峙，就是我的同学当时欺负了我，然后我妈妈觉得我受委屈了，她要让我把事情经过跟对方家长说一遍。当时就是我在家里面能说得很清楚，但是当我面对同学家长的时候，我一句话都说不出来啊。当时我妈就跟我说：“你怎么这么没用？”好，就是因为那一句“为什么你怎么这么没用”，在我人生长达20多年的时间当中，哈，没有学习心理学之前，我非常努力的证明我是有用的，非常非常的努力。那实际上的我是什么样的呢？那个时候的我只是因为喜欢精细化的食物，只是因为我善良敏感，不想背刺同学，不想指责他人，所以我在对方家长面前没有办法说出那个事情的经过是什么。我把饭含在嘴里，仅仅是因为我喜欢精细化的食物而已。但是我的爸爸妈妈不知道所以他们给我贴了那样的标签。曾经的我会因为父母的不懂得，让我感到深深的痛苦和不自信，和他们之间的关系总觉得像隔了一些什么。直到现在为止，我依然会觉得脑子里知道他们是爱我的，但是心里面总感觉跟他们的距离是远的，是没有办法亲密的。所以就是一直以来我的教育的使命，我做教育的使命就是读懂孩子，让每一个孩子都拥有懂得他们的父母。就好像那个小女孩一直在敲打我，她告诉我被父母懂得的孩子究竟有多幸福。所以我很努力的想要为孩子们去创造这样的一个家庭氛围，让他们都可以拥有懂得他们的父母。所以我们的平台有一个 slogan， 就是做天下孩子的伯乐，培养伯乐型父母。那我想问大家，就是你们有真正的读懂过你们的孩子吗？那些养育路上的坑，你们究竟踩了几个呢？过去那些你用经验给孩子贴过的标签和错误认知， 来，我们一个一个的去过哈。就是在我很长一段时间当中，我去陪伴孩子成长。我们有父母课程，有家长和青少年一起工作的过程当中，我看到过非常非常多的孩子，这些孩子可能在学校里面都被老师贴上过一些标签，比如说这个上课好动就是不遵守纪律，有多少人是这样认为的？好，那错误认知2，沉默躲在角落不敢举手就是胆小吗？大家有没有共鸣？就是很多作为不管你是父母也好，还是那个老师哈，就是看到这样的孩子，你们对他的评价是什么？会不会认为沉默躲在角落不敢举手的孩子就是胆小呢？会不会认为就是粗心的孩子就是态度不认真呢？会不会认为顶嘴的孩子就是没有敬畏之心呢？那些游离在外不参与睡觉摆烂的孩子，他们就是不求上进吗？可能孩子的缺点还有很多很多哈，我们看到的孩子这些现象可能还有很多很多，我们会用各种各样的标签，或者是我们理解的经验来诠释他们，给他们下定义哈。那如果我们一直用这样的一些错误的认知，不断的去纠正孩子，那我们的孩子会怎样呢？就像当年我的父母，他给我贴上的标签是胆小是没用是。那你们觉得这些孩子长期被这样定义之后，他们会怎么样？然后当父母看到孩子的一些行为不符合他们期待的时候，父母不断的去纠正，孩子又无法改变，那这时候他们的亲子关系又会怎样呢？孩子会变得没有自信，会受挫，会孤独，会沮丧，会抵触。当孩子进入青春期之后，比如说他1年级到3年级，他可能那个时候他力量还很小，他可能会因为父母、老师、同学的评价变得没有自信，受挫、孤独、沮丧。但当他3年级以上，他开始有力量了，当他再遭遇他人的这些标签，他可能会抵触可能会逆反，可能会不想回家可能会关上房门，可能会抑郁，可能会焦虑最终导致什么？就是亲子关系破裂。我们看到大量的案例就是有很多孩子没有办法去学校，父母也很焦虑，但是就是这个孩子陷在那个情绪当中，完全没有办法出来那我觉得那样的关系就会变得非常的可惜那谁说孩子的行为一定有问题呢？那些好动粗心、胆小，是真的是孩子的行为有问题吗？真的是需要被纠正的吗？还是仅仅因为我们没有读懂孩子那些行为背后的真相到底是什么？那些我们过去不经意给孩子贴的标签，正在破坏孩子对自我的认知，也在破坏着你所看重的亲子关系。那正确的做法是什么呢？我们可以就是当我们看到孩子不符合我们期待的时候，我们可能需要做的第一步是平复自己的情绪，先放空自己。当我们能够停下来放空自己的时候我们的智慧才会生长出来。就是有一句话叫做定能生慧我们要把自己放在这个中心，让自己马步先扎稳，然后能够定住，然后重新去看一看我的孩子的行为，他背后的真相到底是什么，尝试去理解它。那我用的工具其实是五行，中国阴阳五行学我用这个工具可以清楚地帮我看到每一个孩子背后的特质到底是什么，那么为什么会有这样的一些行为反应以及我们的机会点在哪里，我们怎么帮助这些孩子们根据他们的特质去匹配合适的养育方式。 OK， 这3步大家可以记一下回到0步，放空自己，深呼吸。第2步，读懂孩子的行为，尝试去理解他。第3步，根据孩子的特质和需要去匹配合适他们的养育方式。如果我们能够用对方法，看懂孩子，那么我相信每一个孩子都是天才，没有普通孩子，都是天才而孩子的天赋往往藏在他们的缺点当中 那我们就一起来看一看，一起来拆解一下每一个错误行为背后，孩子到底在释放一些什么样的信息，他们到底藏着一些什么样的天赋是没有被我们发现的，以及我们要怎么运用他们的天赋，设计一些相应的教学方式、养育方式，来帮助这些孩子们更好的成长。那过去我的父母对我的错误认知有吃饭慢、胆小、被人欺负没用。那从吃饭慢这个行动当中，好，是因为什么？这个行为背后是因为真相到底是什么呢？是因为从五行上来讲，哈，我的五行能量属性是一个心经，好，大家可以理解为它就像是一个出厂设置一样。好，我的出厂设置是心经，那心经的这个孩子的特质是什么呢？他喜欢追求精细化的这个内容。那精细化这个内容如果放在咨询里面，代表什么呢？我能够一针见血的找到问题的核心那这就是我的天赋如果把精细化这个部分放在我工作当中，就可能是细致，但是一个人他很细致的时候，他就会影响效率。好，所以任何事物它都有阴阳两面，它有缺点也会有优点。那当我在追求精细化的时候，我吃饭的时候，那个米饭如果太粗，我就没有办法吞咽下去；如果食物的纤维太粗，我也没有办法嚼烂，所以就表现为我吃饭很慢OK， 那针对这样的问题，一个心经的孩子，他就追求的就是精细化。你没有办法改变的时候，那父母要做出怎样的调整呢？很简单哈，把食物做得更精细。如果有一些食物它是粗纤维的，那是不是可以尝试把它切成小段小段的呢？是不是可以多准备一些汤汁呢？对，就是这些方法都是可以让一个心经的孩子，追求精细化食物的孩子，可以非常快速的把饭吃下去的，而不是一味着在孩子的行动层面去纠正他慢你就让他快，你没有看到他慢背后的真实原因是什么。OK， 再给大家举第二个例子，也是我就是当年我被我妈说没用的时候，那个场景是因为我没有办法在同学家长面前说出同学犯的错。为什么呢？也是因为我心经的特质。心经除了追求精细化之外，它还有一个特点，就是善良、敏感、讲义气，排斥任何的瑕疵。当时我的想法是，如果我在同学爸爸面前说了同学的坏话，就好像留下了一个瑕疵，我在做一件在我就是价值观不符合的事情。因为对我来讲，讲义气非常的重要，但是我在同学爸爸面前说我同学的坏话，这件事情是我觉得没有办法做出来的。包括我现在也是一样，就是在很长的一段岁月当中，我是有精神洁癖的，我没有办法去做任何的去污蔑别人的事情，或者说背后说别人的坏话，到现在都没有办法做到OK， 好，经的特质就是他要过滤一切的杂质，包括他的人格上的杂质，所以我宁可自己委屈，我也不愿意在同学爸爸面前说同学的坏话。但是我妈妈不知道所以如果当我的父母知道我的特质是不会做任何背刺同学的事情的，所以父母可能他要花的时间和精力就是用在他觉得我委屈，他要包容我的情绪，接住我的情绪，去充分的倾听我，去信任我去陪伴我，去练习如何自我保护，而不是带着我强迫我去在同学爸爸面前就是替自己说话或者说父母如果真的觉得不公平，他也可以自己去，而不是带上我一起去OK， 所以当父母不理解孩子的这个行为背后的真实原因的时候，父母常常会犯很多很多的错好，那我们再来讲刚才我们提到的错误认知一，孩子上课好动是不遵守纪律。好，我们看一下孩子上课好动的情况。在我10年以来 就是跟孩子们一起去工作的过程中，包括我们最近一直在开工作坊，那我们观察到很多的孩子就是好动的孩子，通常有3种能量模型。第一种能量模型是水的孩子，5行能量是水的孩子，他喜欢流动就是水是流动的状态。那么他在上课的时候，通常会上课的时候他坐在位置上，他身体不能动，他就会动什么呢？他就会动腿，抖腿，他可能抖腿或者是浑身扭来扭去。我们有很多的孩子被老师说不专注，那不专注的原因是因为课堂里他不允许动，这个孩子他需要在动态中才能够保持专注。那第2种孩子呢，他是火的孩子，火的孩子极度的需要关注，当他上课的时候举手发言没有被老师叫到的时候，这个孩子很有可能就会发生交头接耳的情况，因为他要干嘛？他要引起别人的关注。第3个是木的孩子，木的孩子他是需要用身体的方式来进行学习的，比如说做笔记，比如说就是用剪刀手工比如说实际的操作性的工作他通过这样的方式，他可以让自己变得更专注。但是如果你没有机会让他去做笔记，他就变成什么呢？搓橡皮玩手就这种情况。所以经常老师在学校里面碰到这样的孩子，就会喊家长来，甚至有的老师会让家长带孩子去就是去看心理医生会觉得孩子是不是有多动症我觉得这些评判对于孩子来讲都是很有杀伤力的对。好，然后如果我们有这样的孩子，看到了孩子这些水的孩子是爱流动的，火的孩子是渴望关注的，木的孩子是用身体学习的，那针对这些孩子我们要怎么办呢？在教育上面，我在教学上面经常会做的一种方法就是设计多元的动态且丰富多元的教学形式，比如说教育戏剧，比如说音乐水的孩子当他身体不能流动的时候，他没有办法专注，那我们可以在课堂里面放一些音乐有的孩子他是需要通过视觉化的方式，比如说教育戏剧，他就是用一种视觉化的方式来学习，播放视频也是用视觉化的方式来学习。那当这些水的孩子他可以在戏剧当中去角色扮演然后去参与，他就可以在一个更加健康的环境当中去让他流动起来。比如说正常的我们传统的教学它是不允许孩子动的，但是教育戏剧这个部分让孩子们参与演出，它是允许孩子动的，孩子动是没有问题的，所以孩子在这个部分当中他容易获得成就感。包括我们说木的孩子他是通过身体来学习的，那么就可以给他布置一些在课堂当中去设计一些绘画书写等等的环节具体的操作，让这些孩子们可以把手可以有地方可以安放它所以就是如果有一些合适的设计在课堂当中呈现的话，那这些孩子们被评判的可能性就会降低同时我们要赋予这些孩子们一些具体的职能，在他们做到的时候要给予认可关注等等 OK。 那错误认知2大家都会认为沉默躲在角落的不敢举手的孩子是胆小那真相到底是什么呢？我们怎么去理解沉默躲在角落不敢举手的孩子呢？他们的行为背后是什么？真相到底是什么在我看到大量的案例当中，只要看到有的孩子他是躲在角落的，他是不敢举手发言的，他是眼神闪躲的，我就能够猜出这个孩子他是什么能量形态的在5行当中癸水的孩子，他有一个习惯，就是喜欢在角落里默默的观察所有人，他最享受的就是我知道你们所有人在干嘛，但是你们看不见我，他是最享受这个部分的。所以当他被聚焦的时候，他被老师喊到的时候，他就会非常的不自在，他希望就是他是能够在角落里面不被发现的，这样会让他更有安全感所以还有一个情况是什么呢？就是我们说癸水的孩子他比一般的孩子更加需要安全感，他非常的敏感那针对这样的孩子我们要怎么做呢？ 好，第一个匹配他合适的养育方法哈，就是等待，我们要学会等待，等待不逼迫孩子。第二个，我们要允许他用其他方式，当他发言，他不愿意发言，站起来发言，不愿意被更多人看到，那怎么去让他去转化他的所学呢？我们可以设计用书写的方式让他来回答问题对，或者说当这个孩子他觉得这个场域足够安全的时候，他已经准备好的时候，再让他发言。当他不想发言的时候就不发言很多妈妈会跟我讲说，我的孩子什么都知道，但是就是不肯发言，他就是太胆小了。好，不是太胆小了，是这种站起来被很多人看到的这种能量模型不是他所喜欢的。我们以前有一个个案，这个孩子妈妈就让他去学口才去学演讲，但是每一次去演讲课的时候，孩子都无比的痛苦，妈妈就觉得很纳闷，为什么他是这个样子的明明他能力可以的呀，为什么就是不肯站上去呢？花了很多的力气，然后我上了很多的课，每一次上演讲课都很痛苦。最后我们给他调整了一个方案，就让孩子从演讲变成写作。这个孩子很快就在当地的报社刊登了他的作文全校老师同学都表扬他了就是这个就是我们说，当我们知道孩子的长板在哪里的时候，我们只要把我们的注意力放在长板上，让他在长板的这部分不断的去发挥就好了所以这个孩子后来把很多的精力放在书写上面他甚至用笔名，他不让别人知道他真实的名字是什么，这对孩子来讲非常的契合他的能量形态第三个错误认知是，一个粗心的孩子他真的是态度不认真吗？我们通常会粗心的孩子有几种情况，比如说他经常读错题、漏题、写错字，什么原因呢？背后的原因是因为五行能量形态当中有一个模型叫做川亥川亥的孩子的天赋是什么？他非常的有创造力，他经常会他的思维模式是跳跃型的，所以那些悬疑小说的作者，那些电影拍的开头就是有了开头让人猜不到结尾的那些作家那些导演编剧都是有川亥模型的所以我们说就是当我们遇到这样的孩子的时候，他经常会无意识的漏题、错题、写错字，那我们该怎么引导呢？当这个模型它在他生命中出现的时候，我们要知道的是，我们就是提醒孩子，培养他不断的去检查的能力，以及允许他犯错好，那第四个错误认知，顶嘴就是没有敬畏之心吗？以前我们的夏令营当中有一个孩子，他妈妈经常会被老师投诉说这个孩子经常跟老师顶嘴，老师说一个 A 观点，他一定会说一个 B 观点，那什么原因呢？是因为这个孩子的五行能量模型当中，他有一对冲散的模型，就好像水跟火，哪吒和敖丙一个人的身体里有一个哪吒，同时有一个敖丙，他们两个是不同的对立面所以就是这样的孩子的天赋模型是什么？他天然的具有多元的视角，所以这样的孩子我们会让他去辩论，在课堂当中去设计一些辩论的环节，培养他辩证的思维，让他多去参加比赛，多去跟别人对战对抗会让他能量非常的舒服同时他又不会就是再去跟老师对抗了因为他有很多的时间和精力都花在了就是课堂的设计这个辩论当中就是比赛当中我们只要去契合孩子的能量形态去养育他就可以了第五个错误认知就是当孩子游离在外不参与睡觉就是摆烂吗就是很多家长看到孩子就是在很多孩子他非常认真的讨论的时候，有一个孩子在旁边就是不参与，然后在游荡，这时候家长是非常焦虑的，因为他看到其他孩子特别认真，那这样的孩子难道真的就是不认真吗？真的是在摆烂吗？五行当中有一个能量形态叫做辰辰的孩子天然的状态就是他是以不参与为参与的，他必须要有一些干扰，他才能够更加的专注。比如说他可能在写作业的时候他必须要听歌听故事，吃饭的时候要听故事 可能打游戏的时候他还看电视，他必须要同时启动好几个开关同时好几个模型同时运行，他才能够保持更加的专注的状态。但是父母如果不知道，他就会很焦虑哈。然后那这样的孩子我们要怎么去引导他呢？就是我们以前有一些孩子他在上课的时候游离在外，但当我们提问的时候，这个孩子总能够精准的回答出问题，所以代表什么呢？他并没有真的不听和不参与，他只是用他的方式在参与。我经常会给这样的孩子去设计一些职位，比如说让他去当我的助教，当助教是在活动以外的，但同时他又在关注这个活动的发生，他配合我去做一些助教的工作。好 ，OK， 还有第二个就是陈的孩子经常因为我们说陈就像真龙天子哈，就是他有很博学，他非常的博学但是博学的人他经常会有这种情况是什么呢？他不太容易说清楚一个问题。所以我们要做的是什么？就是精准提问，不是责备他你怎么说不清楚，而是要做精准的提问，帮助他把众多知识当中的核心给他摘出来。第三个，我们要允许他游离在外，因为他在用他喜欢的方式在参与，不要去指责他不要去破坏他。可能他跟很多孩子不一样，但我们也要允许他用他最喜欢的方式来进行学习。OK。好，最后想总结的是什么呢？懂得是最大的慈悲。人世间最好的亲子关系莫过于彼此懂得。我希望每一个家庭都能够拥有彼此懂得的亲子关系哈。那么就先从父母读懂孩子开始吧。如果父母能够知道孩子每一个缺点背后他的天赋到底是什么，我该怎么引导他的真相到底是什么，那我们就不会一味的指责孩子，也不会对孩子提一些不切实际就是不切实际的一些期待吧OK， 那希望我的分享对大家有帮助，感谢聆听。
Thank you for Ms. An's presentation. And as our children grow up and enter a more complex educational and social environments, our parenting approaches must evolve as well. Moving forward, we will delve into the adolescent years, which are pivotal for personal and academic growth.
感谢兰陵老师提供的宝贵见解。随着我们孩子的成长，进入更复杂的教育和社会环境，我们的育儿方式也必须随之改变。接下来，我们将深入探讨对于个人和学术成长至关重要的青少年阶段。
Ms. Xuefang Cao is a doctoral student with expertise in positive psychology and growth method. She will provide academic guidance for families with adolescent students. Please join me in welcome.
曹雪芳老师是教育博士的在读学生，主要研究方向为积极心理学和成长型思维，希望通过系统学习来关注儿童青少年的健康成长。他将为青少年家庭来提供专业的指导。欢迎曹雪芳老师。
好的谢谢主持人。然后我想问一下，这个 PPT 可以看得到吗？
可以的，曹老师。
好的，谢谢。那论坛的各位嘉宾各位观众，大家好。非常高兴能够参与到今天的论坛中间来。然后教育论坛的话，对我来说，我觉得就是把我每天在生活中作为父母的这样的一个角色，以及在工作中作为老师这样的一个角色，还有在学习心理学的过程中作为学生这样一个角色，把3个角色呢融合在了一起。所以特别开心能够参与到今天的论坛中间来。那也前面听了几位专家的分享，学习到了很多，所以我今天也想跟大家分享一下父母在青少年发展过程中的这个角色。那我首先从一个故事分享开始。今天跟大家分享的故事叫牵一只蜗牛去散步。故事是这样讲的：上帝给了我一个任务，叫我牵着一只蜗牛去散步。我不能走得太快，因为蜗牛已经尽了它最大的努力。我吹它、抚它、责备它，我推它、扯它，甚至想踢它，但是它的进步还是只有那么一点点。但是走着走着，忽然我闻到了花香，感受到了微风，听到了虫鸣和鸟叫， 看到了满天的星光。我突然明白，莫非是我错了？是上帝叫一只蜗牛牵着我去散步。这个故事呢，其实我一开始读它的时候就被它深深的感动，因为这个故事跟我们养育孩子是很相像的。我们可能因为孩子他走得慢，然后就去焦虑，但是其实当我们静下心来去陪伴孩子的时候，我们就能感受到另一番风光。特别是青少年时期的孩子，因为他在这个时间段呢，有一些青少年独特的特点。我们都知道，青春期是一个标志着从童年到成年的一段特殊的旅程。在这个时期，它是一个非常关键的一个过渡时期，它可能极力的想要消除青少年这样的一个刻板印象，不成熟这样的一个刻板印象，而想要变成一个小大人，或者说一个真正的大人。但是他这个时间呢，又是在不断的自我寻找，在想要找到自己在家庭中的位置是什么样的，自己在班级里的位置是什么样的，或者是自己在社会上的位置是什么样的。在这样一个自我寻找的过程中，自我探索的一个过程中，就难免会出现一些跟家长的一些碰撞。所以我们经常会听到妈妈讲说，哎，我的孩子已经进入青春期了，他说的话真的要把我给气死了啊！有的时候就会出现孩子怼父母这样的一个状况。那为什么会出现这样呢？其实我们都知道，人有一个物理的客观世界，同时他也有一个心理的世界。这两个世界它不是完全重叠的，它是有很多的不同的。那对于青少年时期的这个孩子来说，他认知中的父母也有一个物理的客观的父母，但是同时也有一个他内化的心理的父母。这两个父母也不是完全重叠的，也是会有很多的区别的。为什么会出现孩子会怼父母呢？因为可能在那一个时刻，他内化的父母，他就觉得这个时候我的爸爸妈妈不是这个达到他的预期，或者说有一些觉得我这个时候的妈妈比较糟糕，所以他就会开始攻击爸爸或妈妈，所以他就会开始怼父母。那这个时候我们作为家长怎么办呢？其实我们应该要去理解去理解孩子。最好的办法就是说，你就对自己说，他说的不是我，这孩子他说的不是我，他骂的也不是我。如果说此时此刻你觉得他骂的不是你，他说的也不是你，那这个事情不就飘过了吗？也许明天就什么事情都没有了。所以当理解孩子的时候，可能就不会有那么多的矛盾会存在了。当然飘过呢，其实并不能解决所有的问题。在跟青少年时期、青春期的这个孩子沟通的时候，我们还是要注意一些技巧和方法的。首先呢，我觉得应该是要少讲多听啊，千万不要跟青春期的孩子去啰啰嗦嗦一大堆，这样的话只会适得其反。同时在听的过程中呢，要尽量的 active， 你不能光听，你得主动的去听啊，并且具有反思性的一些去倾听啊。那第三个呢，就是当孩子遇到困难的时候呢，我们得跟他一起探索，千万不能跟他说我不知道，这样的话他可能以后就不会再向你求救了。那第四个呢，我觉得我是觉得应该要关注这个我们的肢体语言，但是这个对中国的这个爸爸妈妈跟孩子来说可能有一点难度，因为我们东方文化下，这个像拥抱这样的肢体语言可能用的比较少，特别是异性的，像爸爸跟女儿、妈妈跟儿子之间，可能拥抱的这个比较少，但是其实没关系。我们现在的话，其实可以是用这个社交媒体进行交流的。不好意思，如果说你没有办法当面表达，那么其实是可以用微信来进行一些补充啊。那最后一个呢，就是对青春期的孩子呢，因为他现在他的思维他各方面都处在一个快速发展的时期，所以我觉得应该是尽量要珍惜跟他沟通的时间，每天试着找一些时间跟他谈，哪怕只有几分钟。 好的，那么关于下面一页是关于情感支持和学业支持。对于中学以后的孩子呢，其实学业支持上这一块呢，以我个人的这些经历呢，我是很少再去介入到他的这个学业中间去了，基本上只是跟他讲一下你要加油，或者是希望他能够鼓励他能够做得更好。那我个人更多的呢是关注在情感支持这一块，因为这个特别的关注他这个时期情感的一些发展。那也是因为我自己学了心理学，所以我觉得在情感支持这一块，我也特别得益于心理学的帮助，帮助了我跟孩子之间的一些沟通。像积极心理学这一块的话，它有很多的积极的心理品质可以引导孩子。那我这边有列了4项，第一项是感恩。除了在生活中会跟孩子沟通一些感恩的一些实例呢，我对感恩的这个叫崇拜或者敬佩呢，我们还甚至有发展到，就是我们会跟孩子讨论名字比如说这个人的名字中带恩字的，像美国是这个叫恩夫或者是恩诺，然后或者另外一个名字叫孝恩，它其实表达的情感是不一样的。那我们也会去分析这些名字背后所期许的是什么。通过这样的一些小的实例呢，希望孩子能够学会感恩，因为懂得感恩的孩子，他一定不会太差。那第二个呢是关于 resilience 这个是关于，因为我们生活中都会遇到一些困难，那么当孩子遇到困难的时候，我们该怎么去引导他们？那我希望他们是可以有弹性的去处理的。第3个是关于乐观，也是一样，乐观的孩子的话一定不会太糟糕。我也是跟我的孩子讲，你一定要学会乐观积极。第4个是关于 well-being。well-being 这一块的话，就是我们最著名的那个模型就是我们马丁塞里格曼这个教授的这个 PERMA， 就是积极的情绪、积极的投入、积极的关系以及意义和成就。那我知道清华大学那个彭海平教授团队，他们在解读这个 well-being 的时候呢，因为针对我们中国的孩子呢，还有再加入了一些中国特色的东西，其中一项呢就是积极的父母，因为要所有都积极，才能创造幸福感，才能创造 well-being。好，那最后一项呢是关于这个如何平衡孩子的学业和孩子的兴趣爱好，因为其实进入到中学以后的话，我们的孩子的这个学业其实已经非常的繁重了，那兴趣爱好呢又也很重要。那学业和兴趣爱好其实它是2片不同的战场，你要在这2片不同的战场上怎么样去打好这个仗呢？我觉得只有一点，就是说要引导孩子学会管理时间，做时间的管理大师。你只有管理好你的时间，你才能在学业和兴趣爱好中做一个平衡。那因为时间的关系的话，我今天的分享就先到这里，然后感谢大家的聆听，谢谢。
Thank you for Ms. Hao's presentation. And now we will transition to a very important part of today's forum. It's time to hear directly from those who are on the front lines of our parenting every day. Their real-world experiences and stories are invaluable in understanding how theoretical knowledge translates to practical applications. We have 3 parents who will share their personal experiences for informing close bonds with their children. Let's begin this with enriching exchange. We'll welcome our first parent speaker, Chloe Lin, a mother to a 4-year-old and a doctoral student at OEZ, to share her experiences with her younger daughter.
Thank you, Doreen, for the introduction.
感谢曹雪芳老师的精彩演讲。以上呢也是我们所有教育专家们的演讲。现在我们将过渡到今天论坛另外一个非常重要的部分，是时候直接听听那些每天都在一线育儿的家长了。他们的现实经验和故事，对我们理解理论知识，并且如何转化为实践应用，至关的重要。所以我们邀请到了3位家长来现场分享他们与孩子建立亲密关系的个人经验。第1位家长发言人是林可云老师。林可云老师是一名4岁孩子的母亲，同时也是安大略省教育学院的博士。让我们欢迎林可云老师来分享她与年幼女儿的经验。欢迎。
Thank you. Okay. I am Chloe, and my Chinese name is Lin Keyun. I am very honored to be invited here to share my parenting experience. Thank you for the invitation. Today, I want to share a little bit about myself, my daughter's educational plan, and my parenting experience. First, a little bit about myself. I was a teacher in the tutoring industry in China for a decade. My job was to help students achieve ideal scores in standardized tests like IELTS, TOEFL, SAT, etc. It was a great job, and I was very proud that I helped shape my students' futures and received a lot of gratitude from parents and students. However, most of my students suffered from great academic pressure. They not only had to finish schoolwork, but also need to take many tutoring classes outside of the school and complete endless assignments until midnight. Every day they were very tired, lacking energy, and their eyes were devoid of light. 就眼里无光. I could do nothing to help them, but deep in my heart, I didn't want my own children to experience such a stressful life. I want them to be whole individuals, to find their own passion, and to be their best selves, not just learning machines. And so since my kid was born in 2019, I had a daughter, and my husband and I started to think about her educational plan. We were very clear that we needed an alternative to the Gaokao. After some research, we decided Canada was the best choice for us. So we applied for Canadian permanent residency. Sorry, I am a little bit nervous. I learned that young children are, I learned that young children are geniuses at language learning and can pick up a second, even third languages without much difficulty. So in 2020, when my daughter just turned 1 year old, I started to create an English-speaking environment at home through English TV programs, rhymes, and daily conversations. In 2022, I started my doctoral program at the U of T and put my 3-year-old daughter in daycare. It turned out that she had no trouble communicating in English with the daycare staff. And this gave me confidence that she could adjust well in a French-speaking environment. Now she's a JK student in a French immersion program and she's doing great. Okay. So the last part is about parenting tips. I like to read parenting books in my spare time. By reading these books, I learn not only how to be a better parent, but also how to take care of myself better. Here are some tips I have learned from the books. Due to time limitations, I cannot cover all of them. The first tip is about try to raise a bilingual or multilingual child as early as possible, just as what I did to my daughter, and because they're genius in language learning. And I also want to cover the fourth tip. Remember to prioritize self-care. Take care of yourself first, then focus on child care. As we have learned before, the guest speakers before me, they all mentioned that it's very important to take care of yourself, right? Because being a parent is really a tough job, especially mothers. Every day, we need to juggle multiple tasks, and we are likely to prioritize our children's needs and often neglect our own. I used to feel depressed and stressed. Yeah, because I have to do so many things every day. So to better take care for myself, I tried many ways like meditation, exercising, and coffee chats with other mothers. It worked. So if you can try one of these things too when you feel stressed. The last part, these are the inspiring books I have read. And I'm wondering how many minutes left. Okay. The first book, Never Enough, is actually a very new book that was published about last year, 2023. And it showed what was happening now in America. The middle class parents, they were very anxious and stressful in raising a perfect child. And they also try to be a perfect parent. And can you see one of the sentences on the page, on the cover? It says, when achievement culture becomes toxic, and when what we can do about it. So everybody, especially the middle class parents, they were so anxious about prepare their children's future success, and they want to do everything, sacrifice everything for their children, and they will try to manage their children's extracurriculum and a lot of things. So it's actually not that good. It becomes toxic. So we should be aware about it. Okay. Don't try to be too perfect. Okay. So it's a kind of never enough culture. Okay. And the middle two books, they are very helpful because they help me how to talk to my children, how to help me to understand my children, how to communicate them. And because every kid needs to be seen and to be heard is very important. And this book, The Good Inside, is quite popular too. I even subscribed the website because there are a lot of workshops to teach me how to be a good parent, how to understand my kid, to create a good child and parent relationship. And I also read some other books, because every kid is very different, their personality. And my daughter is a highly sensitive children. So I read a book about highly sensitive child. And I know, being shy or sometimes being slow to warm up is just about the personality. It's not that your kid has kind of problem. No, it's not. Actually, highly sensitive children, they're a treasure, not a problem. So first you need to understand your children, and you need to tailor your parenting skills to raise your children. That's very important. Yeah, that's all for my presentation. Thank you for listening. Oh, if you want to get in touch with me, you can send me an email or just add on my WeChat. So we can have a talk, maybe coffee chat in the future about how to raise our kids. Thank you.
Thank you for Chloe sharing. And next, our parent speaker is Weijiang Chen. He's a 12-year-old. He's a father to a doctor-year-old, and he's a master student at OEZ. Welcome.
谢谢林可云老师的精彩分享。第二位分享的家长是陈伟江老师，他是一名12岁孩子的父亲，也是安大略省教育学院的教育硕士。让我们欢迎陈伟江老师来分享他和他女儿的精彩故事。
All right. Hello. My name is Tom. So I need to turn it off, right? Testing. Oh, okay. It's better. Hello, I'm Con. So currently I'm a Master of Education student at OIC. Thank you very much for having me, giving me this opportunity to share my parenting experience in here. Just some, okay, yeah. So before coming here in the past, part of my job duty was to teach. So in my first lectures of the courses I taught, one of the icebreakers were always my daughter's photo. So this was, okay, I don't think you can see it clearly. So that's what was how my daughter looks like when she was 1 year old. The response from my students were usually very good. And these were taken right before the pandemic. Yeah, so in the past, I studied philosophy. Now I'm studying higher education, student development and student service. So I know I'm not an expert in childhood education. I'm just a father trying to be a better father every day. And what I have been doing to my daughter are not supported by any childhood education theory at all. So please feel free to analyze me. And if you don't mind, please share your advice to me. I really want to learn from you guys. Yeah. So the first part is what we did to our daughter before she was 6 years old. So we tried baby sign language, jolly phonics. We provide a lot of books, and we try to minimize the screen time. The first one, baby sign language. A friend of mine who was a speech therapist suggested us to try baby sign language on our daughter. So the reason was because probably it would potentially foster her emotional stability and also conceptual thinking. So I started to try to introduce baby sign language when she was 3 months old. And surprisingly, very quickly, 2 months later, when she was 5 months old, she started to express herself with the signs. So it was like, for example, when she was hungry, she yelled, of course. Then we went to take a look at her and say, so what do you want? And she did, I'm not sure whether you can see me, so did something like that. Okay, then I goes, oh, are you hungry? So do you want milk? This is milk. You want milk? And her response would be, instead of crying, she was like, So she laughed. I believe probably because she felt successful in communicating with us, just successfully. So she seldom cries at that period of time. So I guess baby sign language was actually quite functional to us. So that is the first one. The second one is jolly phonics. Because my wife and I, we didn't really believe in the mainstream, we call the mainstream kind of childhood education in Hong Kong. So what we could do was to target a specific international school. But in order to send her to the international school, she had to be able to speak in English. So, and by coincidence, we discovered jolly phonics. So when she reached 12 months old, I started to sing the jolly phonics songs to her. So there are in total 42 songs representing 42 phonics. It took us 2.5 years, almost 3 years, for her to familiar with all the phonics and the songs. And when she was 4 years old, her oral English was already very good, but she was not able to read anything, write anything, except her own name. So my wife and I, we constantly felt some peer pressure because most of our friends, they chose the mainstream kind of education, and which put emphasis on memorizing like tons of, maybe hundreds of vocabularies, or maybe even more than 1,000 vocabularies. So their kids were already able to write a lot and read a lot, while our daughters not able to write or read anything. But we kept going, so we tried to insist. And at the same time, that period of time, my daughter was ready to enter into the next stage, the blending rule stage. So but I was not able to teach her that kind of things anymore. So we find out jolly phonics teacher to teach her the blending rules of the jolly phonics. And then another surprise. So very quickly, half a year later, she started to feel very comfortable with reading already. And when she was before 8 years old, she already finished reading all the Harry Potter's book, the 7 Harry Potter's book. And now she's 13 years old, and every day she enjoys correcting my grammar and my pronunciation and my accent very much. And as a father, I enjoy that too, right? So that is Jordi Phonics. So and then we try to minimize the screen time. You know, too much screen time is not good. So we know that, and we provide a lot of books for her. One thing I want to mention about that is I never push her to read, but instead I try to almost like tailor-made according to her character, tailor-make some ways to stimulate her inner motivation to read. For example, like the Harry Potter example. So there was a time when her teacher told us she was already ready to move on to next stage, to read some more sophisticated kind of chapter books. Then we picked Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, the book 1 of Harry Potter. So what I did was, my daughter and I, we watched the Harry Potter movie together, the movie 1 together. And the next thing is I bought a book and I read the book in front of her, not for her, but just in front of her. I kept laughing. Sometimes I would say something like, wow, do you remember Hermione from the movie? She's so funny here. Yeah, and then I kept reading the book. So very quickly, she started to read the Harry Potter, and that's what I did. Yeah, and I don't really want to push her to do things. So that period of time, I was still studying my PhD degree and working. Most of the time, I stayed home to work on my dissertation and take care of her. So we slowly built a strong bonding between us. But then when she reached 6 years old, I graduated, and then I found a job in Macau, so the other city. So we were originally living in Hong Kong. So starting from 6 years old, I have to move to Macau to work during the weekdays. And then they stayed in Hong Kong. So for the first 3 years, 6 to 8 years old, I was able to go back to Hong Kong, visit them during most of the weekends. So in the past, I was like one of the main character in her like development education journey. But that period of time, instead of being the main character, I became just a father, joining her parties, joining her trips to like Disneyland. So very quickly, I discovered that I wasn't able to know the details of her daily life, the challenges she was facing, what she was thinking, no details. And I found that seems like, at least to me, these details were the building blocks for me to have new ideas for her development or education journey. So no more, I wasn't able to contribute much to her development anymore. And then the next 3 years, when she was 9 to 11 years old, it was even worse. So pandemic period, you know, everyone knows pandemic. So that period of time, I was stuck in Macau, they were in Hong Kong. So every year, we were only able to physically see each other for around 2 weeks per year. So it was really bad. And what we could do was only like FaceTime and phone calls, of course. And what I could provide to her was only emotional support. I know emotional support is important, but that I could do more, but I wasn't able to do so anymore. So no more ideas, no more new ideas for her, no more practical support. And it was like we were almost totally relied on the strong bonding we built before she was 6 years old. And now I'm still questioning myself. Sometimes I'm still questioning myself. Is it really worth it for me to move to the other city to develop my career, but at the same time sacrificing the time, the opportunity to be with her? So because of this experience, personally, I think parenting without being physically present is bad. At least in my case, it was really bad. So I think that's enough. So when she was 12 years old, we all decided to move to Toronto and start a new life together. So now we are finally, the details of her life is finally back. It took me like around 3 months to get to know her once again, to know the details of the life. And I'm able to have new ideas again now. So I like, we can have a lot of conversation, even in spiritual level, like every day, recently, much better right now. So these were my experience, and there are a few personal principle, guiding principle as a father in my mind. The first one is I want to be her friend, but I don't want to be an authoritative figure in her mind. Yeah, so what I'm doing is like I if needed, I would apologize to her, and sometimes I would say, I don't know the answer, but probably we can find it out together. So I probably know the way. So I just want her to feel comfortable to talk to me, especially when the time comes when she needs support, right? So this is the first one. The second one is we put emphasis on love and we appeal to reason. No violence, no corporal punishment. So personally, when I was a child, I experienced a lot of domestic abuse. I'm not a fan of that. I don't believe in domestic abuse. So no corporal punishment. And at the same time, we don't put emphasis on winning and losing. Sometimes I would say like, yeah, if we want to win this fight, if we want to win this debate, all of us would lose our happiness. So sometimes we say that. And so instead of winning, we should like appeal to reason. We discuss based on reason, based on love, and remember to breathe. Yeah, something like that. And the third one is keep promise. I'll try not to make promise easily to her, but if I make the promise to her, I'll try to keep it. And if I fail to do so, I will apologize and I will explain to her why. I just want her to trust me. So I just want her to feel safe when she comes home. The last one is like we emphasize on inner motivation, but not behavior. I keep trying not to push her to do things, but we keep on creating ways to stimulate her inner motivations. Just like what I mentioned earlier about the Harry Potter's book. Yeah, so this is what we been trying to do. Yeah, that's all of my presentation, my sharings, and again, yeah, your advice would be greatly appreciated. Thank you very much. Yeah, and this is my contact. Thank you.
Thank you for Mr. Chen's presentation. And our last family speaker is Lisa Zhu. And she is a mother for a 19-year-old and a doctoral student at OEZ. She also is an associate professor at Hainan University. Welcome.
谢谢陈伟江老师的分享。我们最后一位家长是朱琼丽老师，她是一名19岁孩子的母亲，同时也是海南大学的副教授和安大略省教育学院的博士生。让我们欢迎朱琼丽老师。
大家好，我想用中文，为什么呢？因为我注意到可能我们都是中国的群体，所以我在思考，我说我是否能够 take the privilege to speak Chinese only I mean, focus on Chinese, even though I prepare in English. 对，刚才洪玲已经介绍了，我是 OISE 的3年级的博士生。之前在国内的一所高校教书，我仍旧是那所学校的老师。有一个将近19岁的儿子。他目前在多大的1年级，是 Computer Science 的一个学生。我应该澄清一点，我今天在这，我想更多的我并不是在分享我的什么的所谓的育儿经验，我想说的是，我更多的是在这个过程当中，我想跟大家分享的是我怎么去反思我自己成为一个妈妈，怎么去做一个妈妈。我跟很多就是中国的家长一样，尤其我是在高校里面这样一个工作的环境，孩子越大我越焦虑。然后我记得 在孩子就是在8年级的时候，那时候呢，有很多问题，而且刚才有老师分享到，就是贴标签。我儿子呢，被好多的老师都标签为问题孩子，不完成作业 ，late for school, everything you can name it, absent-minded in class, and always spend most of time non-academic work, except homework, except assignments, everything you can name it. 所以那个时候的我，你想想看，我是高校的老师，所以非常 stressful。我 keep pushing， 你为什么没有像妈妈一样？妈妈那个时候非常自觉，我是 No.1 的学生，你为什么不能 work harder？ 你为什么不交作业？作业是一个学生的一个天职，这是我当时一个口头禅。所以我很不能理解孩子为什么会有这样的一些问题。当时更多的时候，虽然说作为一个教育工作者，其实我感觉自己有很多的理论的框架，但是一旦是套到我自己家庭的时候，我完全是脱节的，因为我面对的是我的孩子，我怎么能够让他跟我不一样？因为我 assume 我自己就是走出了我自己很宽广的一条道路，我希望我的孩子未来能有很宽广的道路。我认为他应该像我一样走我的路，但是我恰恰错了。所以呢，那个时候8年级的时候，我记得当时我们的关系特别的紧张，真的特别紧张。他不太爱跟你说话，而且 worse than everything else， 你可以注意到 ，he was much less happy than when he was young。这是非常悲哀的一件事情。如果在一个家庭关系当中，你发现孩子很不快乐，然后你想去帮助他，但是你并不知道怎么去帮助他的时候，你发现自己很措手无措，就是不知道该做什么。我想很多 struggling 的父母可能都跟我有很多的这种同感。然后呢，我想我的关键点的突破点是2019年。2019年的时候呢，我做出了一个非常大胆的一个想法，因为出于我自己职业发展的一个需要，我呢决定到 OISE 再读一个硕士。其实我本意是想读博士，但是 OISE 没有要我，所以呢我就读了第2个硕士。然后我当时 target 呢，我是想1年完成我的硕士，因为我最终是想要读博士的，所以呢我用1年的时间就自己规划啊。然后当时我就把儿子带着跟我一起来读书，因为爸爸是一个律师，非常的忙，而且在中国的家庭里面，你会发现爸爸真的是一个非常parenting outsider 的那种角色。刚才有任博士刚才在分享说，有2点我特别的 impress。第一呢，就是说为什么妈妈 report low quality parent-child relationship， 因为我们妈妈通常是在这个 center position of parenting， right？ 如果你的孩子不完成作业，微信群里面会有老师说某某某的孩子没有完成作业，对不起，你的孩子经常迟到，你的孩子很 absent-minded， 你的孩子很 rude， 你必须到学校来，到 office 去。所以妈妈通常是在这个角色当中是 central role。所以呢，妈妈为什么就会有这样 low quality parent-child relationship？ 我觉得非常非常不奇怪。然后呢，刚才任博士还说到一点，我非常的，我觉得也很不奇怪。但是呢，我想说，就是他说到的一点，就是说，他说妈妈 report parent-child high quality parent-child closeness，yes， parent-child closeness。这里我想 challenge 一下，这个 closeness 是我们 assume 我们 close to our child. Actually, our children don't think we are close to them. 这是我想说的，就说 closeness 这是一种双向的，不是单向的。It's bilateral. It's multilateral. It's not unilateral. 所以就是回到刚才我说到，就是19年这个 breakthrough 开始了，我来到加拿大，一个非常陌生的一个 foreign country， 而且某种意义上是一个 single mother， 因为我先生并没有跟我一起过来，因为他要承担很多的家庭责任，所以呢，成为一个所谓的单亲的，而且一个是全职的一个学生，在 OISE 学习，然后同时做父母，非常非常的 challenging。那么我自己，但是在这样的一个 challenge 过程当中，我发现一些很微妙的变化，就是当我把我教育的重心放到了我自己，而不是我的儿子。当我 focus 在我自己的 learning， 还有我自己的 education， 我自己的 reflections 的时候，我发现很多事情都变了。这里面有很多就是在无意当中，甚至很多的时候是一种求助。举个最简单的例子，我忙到，因为我有一个学期是一个学期修了4门课，然后我基本没有时间做饭给我儿子吃。然后我儿子呢爱吃各种红烧肉啊等等，红烧猪脚等等这些东西。然后有一天我就跟他讲，我说非常的抱歉，我真的没有时间给你做饭。我希望你如果要吃的时候，你自己做，你自己学着做。你们猜猜看，孩子做了什么？孩子自己去找视频，自己去学怎么做糖醋排骨、红烧肉 ，you name it。然后他现在已经是一个 much better cook than I am， 所以我觉得，就是说，在这个过程当中，我想说的是，当我们承认我们的无助，当我们向孩子发出需要帮助的这种请求的时候，孩子一定会去尽力帮助你，这是我相信的。从我儿子身上，我看到的也是这一点。那么，在这样的过程当中，其实我发现。正是因为我把我的 focus 在了我的学业上，当然有一点我要想说一下，就是我儿子的英语，很不成问题。就是当时他来的时候，因为从小他的语感培训的就特别好，然后呢，整个学校的这个过渡呢，他也过渡的非常好。因为可能国内的一些孩子过来了，可能有这样的一个语言过程，但是我儿子呢，没有给我在这方面增加任何的需要的一些额外的，所以我就让他 explore。这里面呢，而且我觉得在这个过程当中，我很重要的一点，我改变了我自己在国内的一些做法，就是我对他有更多的信任，我相信他，而且我允许他去犯错误，这点非常非常重要。因为作为内地的，就是在国内，我真的很害怕我的孩子去犯错误，我真的害怕他跌跤，因为我觉得每一次跌跤可能都是成本。但是恰恰我们忘了，这种成本背后是更多的回报。他需要从失败当中去学习更多。所以我觉得，在整个的这样的一个我自己的学习过程当中，我可以非常坦诚的说，真的是我自己的 education saved my relationship with my son。所以这里面我想就是强调一点，就是我自己的一个反思，就是怎么去学做一个父母，不是把眼睛总放在我们的孩子身上，我们应该把眼睛更多的放到我们自己身上。当我们用更多的时间，用更多的这种问题去思考。哦，对了，我还想说，为什么读硕士也好，读博士也好，我还想说一点哈，就是我想这一点可能是想读书的这些家长有帮助的。真的在很多的这个求学的过程当中，读到的东西会让你有更多的反思。比如说，我虽然是一个教育者，做了这么多年的老师，我可能都没有时间去问一些教育最基本的问题。What is education for? What is the good quality of education? What is the ultimate purpose of education? What is the good relationship? Why relationship is so important? 我想这些问题呢，只有当你 focus 在你的学习的时候， focus 在你的 reading 的时候，你可能更多的就会去思考这些教育最本源的问题。而这些问题呢，恰恰是这些最本源，却是最基础的问题，决定了我们是否能够真正的去读懂我们的孩子，以及去认识我们的孩子。所以说呢，刚才有老师分享说读懂孩子，真的我是觉得，当我们如果对这些最本源的问题去做最本源的探索，我们真的就能够建立关系，关系太重要了。所以呢，我想说的是说，在我整个的这个学习的过程当中，真的我挽救了我跟孩子的关系，而且某种程度上，我非常相信，我更知道在这个教育的过程当中，我应该退居其后，不要总是给他指指点点，你应该做这，你应该做那，你应该怎么做。No, that's not your role. 你只是在那去观察、去思考、去反思。我想这一点太重要了，而且我恰恰是在这些过程当中，我更多的有我的自我认识，而且我有更多的接纳。接纳他成为他自己，而不是成为我。我是我，他是他。我想这种 separate 的这种 concept， 每一个父母都要有。你不要期望你的孩子成为你期望的他，你应该让他成为他希望的你，他希望的他自己。我想呢，就是说，真的有好多好多的这种反思。我还想说一点，就是说，当我们说让孩子成为他自己的时候，有时候是很难的。有一段时间呢，他青春期反应特别厉害，而且再跟大家分享一点小故事。我还有几分钟吗 ？Sorry。OK， 差不多了哈。OK， 有一段时间呢，我儿子呢不愿意跟我吃饭，因为每一次吃饭呢，我要像很多家长一样，可能会去了解他的一些事情，但是呢，我接纳了他不愿意跟我吃饭。而且那时候呢，我记得那时候应该是17岁，非常的，就是很 rebellion 的那种状态。你叫他往东，他一定往西；你跟他说你是否考虑往东，他一定不考虑往东，他一定会往西。是那时候的我非常的淡定，我知道 OK， 你既然选择了往西，我就让你往西去。但是我想告诉你，你想要的 support， 妈妈永远会跟你在一起。所以呢，那个时候呢，我们寻找了加拿大有个很好，我想国内可能也有，就是叫 social worker， 就社会工作者。所以那段时间，社会工作者给我们之间的这种家庭教育建立了很好的一个桥梁。所以呢，我想说，当我们发现我们的孩子需要帮助，而我们自己却不能提供帮助的时候，我们一定要学会寻求帮助。然后我们要非常的坚信我们的孩子一定能够闯过，无论多难，因为我们自己本身就闯过了一个又一个的难关 ，right？ 而且分数也好，学业也好，其实最不重要，重要的是他们是不是活在当下。所以呢，我最后想说的是，我想鼓励和大家家长一起共勉，让我们都努力的认识我们自己。同时读懂我们的孩子，成为能够真正读懂孩子的幸福的父母。Thank you.
Thank you all for participating in today's discussion on our sub-form on our family education. I hope this session is illuminating and provided the valuable insights into the role of effective companionship in nurturing a healthy family environment and offering emotional support across various stages of children and adolescents. As we close this forum, let's carry forward the ideas and strategies we shared here today and continue to support each other in our journeys as parents and educators. We hope to see you again in our future events to further explore and discuss the topics that impact our families and communities.
感谢大家今天在家庭教育分论坛上的参与，我希望今天的会议能够启发大家思考，并在今后培养健康家庭环境和为孩子提供情感支持方面有很大的帮助。在本次论坛结束时，让我们将今天分享的观点和教育理念继续的推广，点亮教育的无限可能。我们期待在未来的活动中再次见到大家。
This is the timetable for our other sub-forms in showing here. Should any of the session pique your interest, please don't hesitate to join. Our next sub-form is art education. Will be held from 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. Toronto time on May 31st. You are all welcome to attend.
这是其他分论坛的时间表。如对其他分论坛的主题感兴趣，也欢迎您随时报名。我们下一场分论坛的是艺术教育，时间是北京时间的6月1日早上8点到11点，欢迎大家参加。
Thank you once again, and best wishes to all of you, and as you continue to guide and further your families. Thank you.
再次感谢大家的积极参与，祝大家在日后家庭教育方面一切顺利，谢谢。